So, I'm going to put this melting snowman up here, and I want you guys to kind of think about that for a minute. But first, good morning, happy Saturday morning. It's a kind of a good way to kick off the weekend and get things going. And I have a couple different ways we can go with this morning, but I just want to let you know my goal with this course. So we're going to spend about 4 hours together today. And my goal with this, and this is a newbie option course, okay? This is for people that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, people on here have never even traded in an option and they don't know what an option is, okay? And my goal with this is that on Monday, you're going to be able to place and make money with an option trade, okay? Now that being said, I got a couple of questions for you. And first of all, how many of you in here have just, I want to kind of see the experience level in the room when it comes to options. How many people in here have never traded an option before in their life? Just out of curiosity. Okay. Okay. We got a couple of you. All right, perfect. Paper traded, never have done anything. Okay, awesome. And then how many of you, I would say you're just brand spanking new into the options market? Okay, you traded one. That's definitely brand spanking new. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so that's good. And here's what we're going to do, because again, if we go back to my goal for this 4 hours, is that I actually don't want you to understand everything there is to know about options, okay? I think that's a disservice. And I've read a lot of books on options, and I'm amazed because sometimes I'll sit there and I'll read a book, and there's a lot of good books out there on options. But what will happen is, you sit there and you're reading a book, and I mean, it gets so much into like the Greeks and options pricing and the minutia of that it's easy to get lost. And it's one of those things where no wonder, if somebody is just starting off in the options market and they happen to pick up that book, it's just going to be overwhelming, and it really doesn't need to be. So what I'm going to do is I have no intention of teaching you everything there is to know about options. I want to teach you the stuff that I think matters, the stuff that gives you enough information to understand the pricing in the options market. And then by the end of this, as we get into the last hour, give you strategies that you can use on Monday that make sense to you. Okay, so first you're going to understand. By the time we're done with this, you're going to be, oh wow, I understand what options are. I understand how they work. Okay, and now I know which ones to buy on Monday. All right. So oh, nice. Okay, very good, Doug. So what I'm starting here, and I think this is probably the most important thing that you guys can understand about options, is this melting snowman. Okay. And does anybody want to anyone want to take a stab at why I chose this as kind of the representation for options? So okay, yeah. So decaying time. Exactly. So how I want you to think of this, because you don't, and the Greeks, which is theta, delta, all that kind of stuff, they can help you pinpoint this with almost a pinpoint accuracy. And what I'm going to tell you is that you don't need to know it with a pinpoint accuracy. I think the important thing here is just to understand that here's let's call it the core price of an option. Just think of this as a core price of an option. This is going to be what it's worth, what it's really worth by the time it gets to the point where it's supposed to expire. Okay, and so let's just call this $1. Okay, so if an option at the end of the day is going to be worth $1, And that circle there represents $1, although it looks like a cat eye. Now, and this is on, options expiration day. Okay, so that's expiration day. Let's, the third week, which is the third week of every Friday, or third Friday. Okay, so Friday, third week. Okay, now if we're 2 weeks out, you're going to have this core price of what it's worth, and then you're going to have some fluff around it. Okay. And then if you're, say, 4 weeks out, you're going to have this core price of what it's worth, and you're going to have some bigger fluff around it. Okay, and then the further out you go, okay, there's that core price, you're going to have more fluff. Okay, so it does look like a, kind of this smoke rings or something like that. But if you think about this, in this case, the option is truly worth the same, okay, across all of these. And again, you'll get this more in a second. You see across all these times, the core price of the option is worth the same, but the further out you go, there's more fluff around it. And that fluff is just the premium that you pay to control the option, okay? And that premium is like the melting snowman. So, let's say right here, the option is priced at $4 for the total, and here it's $3, and out here it's $2, and then by the time you get to expiration, it's only worth $1. All right, and so, and what you're thinking of here is, if you want to think of, say, a stock like, let's call it, IBM, and let's say that this is a $100, okay, this is a $100 call option, and by the time you get to expiration, the stock's at $101. Okay, and let's say that the price was constant over the last 4 weeks. Maybe it was $101, through the 4 weeks. So, over here again, the core price of the option is $1, and what that $1 is, okay, you got a $100 call. That means that you have the right to buy IBM at 100. So, if IBM then is at 101, then it's really worth $1, right? But the further out you go, the more fluff you have. And every day this fluff is shrinking. Okay, and this is the premium that's paid until by the time you get to expiration, all that premium is gone and all that's left is the real value. And we're going to get more into this, but if you can understand this concept that, when you buy an option, you are buying an asset that is a melting snowman. It is losing value every single day. And it'll help you get your arms around this, okay? All right, so let's now take a step back here, because I know some of you have never have traded an option in your life. And so let's go ahead and take a look here, just add some options. And what I want to do is look at this. So I'm going to bring this over here, and let's blow this up so you can see it. All right, so got that. That's good. Position, that's good. So what I want to do here is really increase the font on this so you guys can see it. We'll see if this maybe kills it. And that's okay. What we just want here is a strike and the bid and the ask for now. And we will work with So the first thing we're going to do is just get a feel of how these works for the strikes and everything like that. All right. And again, this is for the next about 30 minutes or so is going to be focused on people that just have never traded an option in their life, so you can kind of understand how they work. All right. And let me put my drawing tool up here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at Apple here, and the price on Apple, let me double check, is right here. I want you guys to be able to see it. So Apple closed, so here's what we're going to do. We want to try to find something for Monday, okay? And if we come over here, on a daily chart of Apple, let's just say, for now that we're just going to make an assumption here, okay? And the assumption is that, hey, we like Apple. Apple on Friday pulled back to support, okay? And we want to buy Apple, all right? So if we were just looking at this as a stock, and you thought, all right, so Apple here had, had this nice pop higher. It came back to support. This is like a moving average here, and then it came back up to resistance, and now it's back at support. So what do we want to do here? We want to buy it. So we're going to make an assumption here that what we want to do is buy Apple. Okay, so that's the assumption that we're going with. We want to buy Apple. Now, of course, the stock closed at 604.08. All right, on Friday, and you guys know. I mean, you guys can do the math. Let's say if you want to buy 1,000 shares of Apple, that would cost so you just take 1,000 shares at $600 a share. So if you bought 1,000 iPads, how much would that cost? Well, 10 iPads, 10 times 600, that's 6,000. 100 iPads, 100 times 600, that's 60,000. 1,000 iPads, that would be $604,000 and like that. Okay. If you want to buy 100 shares, it would be 60,408, right? Okay, so that all makes sense. So the first thing, obviously, that's attractive with options, again, Options 101, is that an option is a leveraged way to do this. And first, we're just going to look at option pricing. So if you see that an option in this case is, let's call it $8, okay? So an option is $8, and one option equals 100 shares of Apple. Okay? So that means when you see the options quoted as $8, it actually is $8 times 100. Okay? So if you want to buy one option at $8, that's going to cost you $800. Okay? So let's come back over here, and now we can look at the pricing. So we come look at the option prices, and we want it to go higher. So the way this is set up is that you're going to see options on both sides. And the easy thing is on the left are always the calls, okay? And then on the right are always the puts. Now the calls are essentially what you want to buy if you think the stock is going to go higher, okay? And puts are kind of like shorting the stock. You're going to buy puts if you think the stock is going to go lower. So we're going to focus on the call side first, because remember, Apple, we actually want to buy Apple here. It's come back to support, so we want to buy it. So now we have these different strike prices. You're going to see, wow, okay, what I don't understand. You got 585, 590, 595, 600, 605, 610, 615, 620. Okay? So we're going to look at these prices. Okay, and remember, one option represents 100 shares of stock, right? So if we look at just the prices, it's like, wow, this is fairly attractive, okay? That means for, if I wanted to buy the stock outright, if I wanted to buy 100 shares of Apple, okay? So 100 Apple at 604.08 equals $60,408, right? Now, or I could buy one 620 call option, okay, and it's at $9.45. Now remember that represents 100 shares of stock, so you got to multiply that by 100, so that equals $945, okay? And this is where the power of options come in. You can actually buy 100 shares of Apple for $60,408, or you could buy the price movement in Apple, okay? You could buy it's like the representation of 100 shares. Yeah, this is definitely the pen mouse. This is definitely the pen mouse. I'm not using the, I finally acquiesced. For $945. So suddenly this makes a lot of sense. It's like, wow, you mean, okay, so if I want to buy 100 shares of Apple, if I'm just doing the stock, I need 60 grand, but if I'm going to do a call option, which is 100 shares, I only need $945. Okay, well suddenly now this is a no-brainer. Okay, this is like, okay, this makes sense, and this is why people are attracted to options. And what happens is what most people do is they see this and say, I've got a $10,000 account. I'm going to go ahead and buy one call option here. It's only $945. And gosh, if Apple takes off, I could make a killing. I mean, if Apple goes to, $650 here, I could make a lot of money. All right, well, let's go back then, and we've got to kind of understand, how these prices work too. Okay, so the first thing you want to look at, and again, if you're brand new, you may look at this and go, okay, I don't understand. You've got, this one says 585, this says 590, et cetera, et cetera. What is the difference? So how you want to think of this is that it's called a strike price, and it's just giving you essentially the right to buy Apple at this price. Okay, so if you think of it this way, the 585 option gives you the right to buy Apple at $585. Okay. Well, guess what? It's trading for $604.08. So if you've got the right, okay, to buy, so if Apple's at $604.08 and you have the right to buy it at $585, guess what? There's an immediate profit there, right? If I can do the math here, so 14 minus 5 is 9, carry the 1, da-da-da. So that's a profit of $19.08. All right, does that make sense? So if you've got the right to buy it at $585 and it's trading for $604, you've got an immediate profit there of $19.08. All right, so then you go and say, all right, what can I buy this for? Well, you can buy it for $28.40. All right, you might be going, okay, well, wait a minute. I thought that was only worth $19.08. So this is where the snowman comes in, okay? So the core here, you guys remember we were talking about this earlier, the core here is $19.08. The fluff, kind of the outer ring here, in fact, let me do one better here. Now that I have a drawing tool. So we're going to come over here and say, okay, so in that case, here's the core price, okay, and that core price is $19.08, and this is on the 585 calls, okay? So they're worth $19.08. Now, what you notice then is that they're actually not trading for $19.08, okay? They're trading for $28.40. So so what that is then you come around like this, okay, and that's the fluff, and that's the snowman, okay. That's going to melt every day, okay, and there's essentially these expire next Friday. And what's going to happen if Apple stays at $604.08 all week, which obviously is not going to happen, but if it stayed like that all week, what's going to happen is every day this outer layer is going to shrink a little bit every day until by Friday, okay, and so this outer layer represents $28.40 total, okay, and remember, of this, only 1908 is the real value, okay. That real value comes from the stock price minus the strike price. 604.08 minus $585 gives you the real value. Everything above that real value is the fluff, and that fluff erodes every day until on Friday expiration, okay, which is in this case next Friday. All that's left is $19.08. All right. Oh, 932. Okay, so there we go. So, you know, let me get my there we go. So I just want to check in with you guys here and to see if that makes sense. For those of you, obviously, that are, and I'm checking in with those of you that are brand new, I just want to say, like, okay, it's starting to get like what an option is, you know, what's working and all that kind of stuff too. Good so far. We can go faster. Okay, good. And by the way, I'm not going to, I'm spending a little extra time on this, and once we understand this, we're going to race into some setups. But once you guys understand this, it'll be a big plus. So this outer circle then is worth $9.32. Okay, so this is the part you understand. So this option price right here, which is $28.40, okay, for that 585 call, then in fact, let's just do it over here. The 1908 equals the intrinsic value, okay, and that's I just call that the real value. That's what you could, I mean, that's the real value of it. And then the 932 is what I call the fluff. That is also known as the premium. And it's the premium portion that's the snowman, okay? This is the snowman, and this is the part that's eroding every day until when you get to expiration, you know, assuming the stock price doesn't change, that this will be worth 0, and all that's left is the 1908. All right? Okay. So I just want to make sure everybody understands this part, because then we're going to start picking things up a little bit. Now, where this gets even more dramatic, okay, is when you go into the $620 strike in this case. So the $620 strike, all right, gives you the right to buy Apple at $620. Well, guess what? It's only $604.08. So what's that real value of the stock? The real value here, if we're looking at this, replicating the same core, there is no core, okay? It's 0. So the price there of the $9.60 in that case, okay, so $9.60, that is all fluff. And if Apple stayed at $604.08 at the end of the week, this would be worth 0. It would just shrink down to nothing because there is no real value. And that's the part that's key. What you can see here, though, is that the premium part is about the same on both options, $9.60 and about $9.30. So every option has this premium decay. Okay, so now obviously, I'm not going to go through the same thing on the put side, but the same thing obviously works on the put side. So in this case, the 620 put here on this side is exactly like the 585 call example, okay? Because it gives you the right to essentially put the stock to somebody else, short the stock to somebody else at $620. Well, if the stock's at $604.08 and you can force someone else to short it for $620, there's a real value in there. All right, in this case, it's like, whatever, 620 minus 604.08, that is the real value. 604.08. So in that case, the real value here is 1592, and then the rest is fluff. Okay, but just think of it that way. So if you guys get your arms wrapped around that, especially for your new, your newer option traders, it's going to be a big help. So then we're just going to come back to the fundamental question of this. If you guys remember, we were looking at Apple, and we want to buy because we think that Apple is going to go from 604, say 30, back to 617.55. We think it's going to go back to that upper band. So then the question just becomes, what is the best option to buy in that scenario? All right. Now, and so I'll ask you guys here too. So we think that next week, Apple will go from its current price of 604 to, and let's say it's just going to close the week at 617. All right, so what do you guys think? What of all these options here, what would be the best one to buy? Which one would we make the most money with? And again, all we're talking about is the only choice we have at this point is to buy a call. So what do you guys think? Okay, so yeah, and we'll get to that, Abraham, too, and Elizabeth. All right, so there's a lot of 615s. Okay, so let's do this. So let's try this. So this is a good example. So let's say we buy the 615s at 11.75. Okay, and we hold them all week, and at the end of the week, okay, so that's for the 615s. And at the end of the week, and now right now the stock's at 604, okay? So we have stock price, and then strike, and then option price. Okay, and we're looking again for the stock to go from 604 to 615. So we buy the 615 calls, and now at the end of the week, the stock's at 617. And so what are these call options worth? They are worth $2. So if you bought the 615 calls in this scenario, you lost 90% of your investment. All right? So Apple went from 604 to 617, okay? And your 615 call, the 615 call went from $11.75 to $2. Does that make sense? And Camille, you're correct. We're just kind of, we're trying to keep things fairly simple here. If you guys just got this, for those of you that are newer, if you just got this, this will save you a hell of a lot of frustration in the options market. Okay? So this is what happens when you call a stock right. We thought, wow, Apple's going to go up huge, and you just buy the wrong call option because you don't quite understand how they work. Okay? So this is what frustrates options players, is because they get the stock right and then they lose their ass on the option. Okay? Even worse would be the 620s. The 620s would go from 960 to 0. Okay, so again, stock went up, those two options went down. And now, so let's look at some of these other ones here. So now let's say we did the 585s, okay? So the 585s, so let's put together our graph. So we got stock, and it's going to go from 604 to 617, and then we got the strike, and then the strike price. So this time we're going to do the 585 strike. Okay. Now a lot of people will be like, oh, the 585 strike, man, that's expensive. So let's go 2840, and then by the end of the week, where is that strike? Okay, well, you just do 617 minus 585, because remember at this point all the premium's gone, and you got 32. So in this case, Apple goes from 604 to 617, and the 585 strike goes from 2840 to 32. Now, there's two things here that probably stand out. One is, okay, so the expensive option made money. I wonder why. But the next thing is going, well, gosh, the stock went up 13 points, and my option, essentially went up like a couple dollars, right? So you made money on this, but you made $3.60. Now, if you had 10 options, you'd make $3,600 on that. Okay. So it's not bad. If you only had 100 shares of Apple, you'd have made $1,300. You could have had 10 call options and made $3,600. Okay. But you're thinking like, gosh, that's really not that great, right? You didn't make a ton of money. So this is good, but this is good because it shows you a couple things. Okay, and here's a couple of lesson learned here. And the lessons learned here, I guess the takeaways that I want you to get on this, and I guess I could actually type these out, but I'm having fun with my mouse here. Is one is that you do need, for most option trades to work out directionally, you need a big move. Okay? You need a big move, and you need to buy right. So even here, even with all of these option prices, with that move from 604 to 617, you really couldn't make a lot of money here. You could make $3.60 here, but essentially, and you guys see the $600 calls, you'd lose money on the $600 calls too. You'd lose $2. The $600 calls would be worth $17. So you'd lose money on the 600, the 605, the 610, anything above the 600. The 595s, I think you might break even. So let's do 617 minus 22, whoops, not that. Yeah, there we go. 617 minus 595 is 22. So the 595 you'd scratch, okay? And then on the 590, you would make, that'd be worth $27. So you'd make $1.70. Okay, so $1.70 on that one. We already saw this one would be $3.20. This would be 0. Meaning you'd break even, and this would be loss, 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 loss. All right. So, okay. So Bobby says, "I'm not getting this." So what you would just want to realize, Bobby, on this is this. What I'm trying to get you to understand here is just the premium that's involved. Is that in this case you've got to understand premium decay. So here, do you understand this? So the main part of what you understand is if Apple goes from 604 to 617, okay? Do you understand that at the end of the week, these prices will drop and reflect their true value. There'll be no premium. So if it goes to 617, then this option will be worth 0. Okay. This option will be worth 2. This option will be worth, 7, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, so there's a couple things here to get your arms wrapped around. Is that one is what hurts premium, okay? And what hurts premium is this, okay? What hurts premium is slow, steady movement up and sideways action, okay? And then, of course, down moves kill it in this case. The only thing in this case where buying these options where you're going to make a lot of money is an explosion in the price of Apple. So if Apple goes like from 604 to like 660, then you can actually make some money on this. Okay, but a lot of times, and if we come back here and we look at the chart, a lot of times, it's not going to do that. And I think that's the thing where a lot of people will get frustrated, is that sometimes you'll have a move like this where Apple goes from a low here of $565 and goes almost straight up to a high of 620. I mean, and that's a case right there where on the call options you can make a lot of money. But there's a lot of times when the market just does this and goes sideways. Okay? So, and that's the thing. And so what happens is that what frustrates a lot of option traders is that they try to they understand at some point what the call options are doing, but what happens is that a lot of times the markets are doing this, and this is the death of premium. Okay, so in this case, these call options just die a slow, painful death. Okay, and it's really hard to make money on a swing basis. Where you can make money is on this move. Okay, so if you bought the stock here, you'd be fine. You really wouldn't be losing any money. But if you bought the options, you'd have your ass handed to you. Okay, now if you bought it here, like with the squeeze, and hey, you got a nice move, that's great. And that's the thing. And this is where then you kind of start getting into the idea of, it's like, wow, if this premium is so bad, if this premium is just, it's just so horrible, why would anybody even want to buy it? Okay, and that's a good question. And the nice thing is that, if you think about this, I mean, in this case, most of these, a lot of these options here, all the premium just kind of evaporated. And the nice thing is with these options is that you saw right here that, on the $620 call, for example, okay, again, Apple goes from 604 to 617, and that $620 call goes from 960 to 0. So again, you could be right on the stock went up, but you lost 100% of your investment. The cool thing about options now, and this is the part I love about it, is that you don't have to buy this. You can sell it. So let's say you sold this to somebody else. Okay, so you shorted it at $9.60 to somebody else. They bought it because they thought Apple was going to go higher, and it went to 0. Guess what? For you, all that went into your pocket. So you sold one option, you collect $960. If it goes to 0, guess what? You get to keep all $960. And that's the part about options that gets fun, because there are times when you can buy it, but then there's a lot of times when you can sell it to somebody else, okay, and collect the premium. And that's where option trading gets very, very fun, okay? Now, Deepak just said, hey, would that be a naked sale? Now, we're going to get more into that, I never sell naked options, okay? And it's a little more advanced, but by the end of the session, we're going to talk about it. I just kind of want to get your arms wrapped around this, because toward the last part of this, we're going to talk about how to do this via spreads, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so let me see what questions you guys have here. At this point, I just want you to understand, this is an option, how it works, and then we're going to step back and we'll kind of go through some basic stuff. If the stock in the end of the expiration is less than 604.08, do I need to pay now? No, it just depends. So it'll just depend. So let's say that the stock, if I understand your question correctly, let's say that instead of going from 604 to 617, let's say it spends the week and it goes from 604 to, let's call it 585. Well, then any call option you bought is toast. Everything on this side of the ledger is going to be at zero, okay? But all the put side is going to go higher because the put side is essentially the short side. So again, you buy puts if you think the stock is going to go down, okay? So it's like shorting. So if the stock goes down, the put value goes up. And then you buy calls if you're looking to buy the stock. So in this case, then, if the stock actually drops, everything on this side will expire to zero, okay? But everything on the put side will go up. Okay, so now the next thing you want to look at too is, let's go out to the next month. So if you look at this, the thing here is you've got more time. All the options we're looking at here, you had 6 days left. And if you look at the $600 call, it was $19.25. Well, if you come out here and you got another 27 days, you can see it's higher priced. And that's just because you have more time. And one of the ways you can win in the options game is what I say is when you're buying options is give yourself the gift of time. Here you can buy the $600 call for $19, or you can give yourself another like 19 days of life for an extra $3.50. And what's nice about this then is you can sit on it. You have more time for the trade to unfold. You have more time. Instead of in a week, maybe Apple could go from 604 to 617. Well, in 27 days, maybe it can go from 604, to 640. It's got more time, and you only have to pay another $3 to be in the trade for another 19 days. And that's what I mean when you'll hear me say, give yourself the gift of time, because buying options that only have a couple days left is one of the riskiest trades you can do. Now, I'll do it, and you'll see me in the room do it, but it's pretty much day trades. Maybe holding it overnight to flip it out the next morning. But I hate buying options that have 6 days left, okay? And now you should understand why. It's just like the deck is stacked against you, and I would rather be selling these options to somebody else. Okay? Yeah, and the 585, and we'll talk more about that too, of which one to buy. All right. So let's do this. I'm going to switch over to a PowerPoint presentation here. I wanted to dive in there and just really kind of talk about that. And again, I know some of you here are very, very new, and so we're going to kind of backstep here a little bit and kind of talk about some of these basics. And again, our goal with this is that we're going to actually show some setups here that you guys can start doing on Monday. Okay, so now, again, this is very much Options 101. A call option, okay, when you buy a call option, it gives you the right, and essentially I just like to say it's like, okay, a call option means you think the stock's going higher, okay? That's kind of the simple way to do it. If you buy a call option, you think it's going higher. And it's just a way to, and that's what most people buy. You buy it, wow, I like Google, I think it's going higher. Okay, I'm going to buy a call option because if Google goes higher, that call option will increase. Now, you just saw that that's a little bit of a myth, okay, because it has to increase a certain amount, or it could be worthless. And then, of course, the put option is just the opposite. Okay, when you buy a put option, it's the same. The official answer is it gives you the right to sell a given asset at a strike price anytime before the expiration date. The reality of it is a put option is something you buy if you think something's going to go down. Okay, So for example, if we look at CMG had this amazing day yesterday on the downside. And if you look at this, it was down like $88, okay? And some of these options here, in fact, let me see if it comes up. Bid-ask last. Let's see, let's remove that. We're going to come down here to net percent change. And this is where it intrigues people about options, because let's do net change and net percent change. Because, I mean, you can make a fortune overnight on some of this stuff. So we're going to move this up. And then we're going to move this up. We'll hit OK. And, you know, fortunes were made like this. What happened is that now it's not showing, oh, here we go. So what happened is that if you look at this, you know, the last here was $11.70. It gained $11.15 that day. That means the day before it was selling for like, what is that, 50 cents. It made 2,000% in one day, okay? So if you buy something for 50 cents and the next day you can sell it for $12, you just made a fortune. So fortunes were made, and this is what is very sexy about options. You know, if you put $10,000 into this trade, I mean, you can sit there and here, you know, if you say, let's see here. So, you know, you can just kind of, you know, work it backwards here and do the math, right? So if, you know, first of all, 1170 minus 1115, it's like, okay, 55 cents. So 55 cents times 100 is $55. So if you have $10,000 and you decide to put it all into this trade, that means you bought 181 contracts. Okay? And then 181 contracts, which represents 100 shares of stock, so you add 2 more, and then times 1170. So you turn $10,000 into $211,000 and $211,770 on one trade. And that's what's attractive about options, is that you have that opportunity. Okay? Now what's nice about this, and the reason people like it, is that all you had to risk was $10,000. If you were wrong, you lost $10,000. If you're right, you made $200,000. Okay? And what's attractive about options is that that opportunity does exist. And if you can catch a big move like this, and you know, it can happen. Now, I'm going to be very frank. This is, catching a move like this is lucky. Okay, you don't know when CMG is going to get, like in this case, they were downgraded and it was down like, you know, $88. But what happens a lot of times is that you're in a trade, you know, technically, and then you know, you wait, especially on the downside. I mean, the surprise moves to the upside aren't as big. Yeah, and James, that's a great question. What is the probability? The probability is extremely low. It's extremely low. It's more about, it's just understanding kind of the power of options, you know, how they work and why they're attractive. And if you're right on a big move, now I don't know how many of you guys were around, but when Lehman Brothers was going bust, we kept buying puts on it. We'd buy puts at 30, and then it would drop to, you know, 15. And, you know, it was this amazing thing where you could buy these put options for $1 and sell them for like $12, you know, it seems like 2 weeks later, and it's a lot of fun. Now, does this happen all the time? Absolutely not. I mean, it is, it's just kind of showing you just kind of, what the power of these things is. All right, so now let's come back here. So that's the put option. And we've talked about the option side of things in terms of what are calls and what are puts. And then it comes down to is why buy options, and it really comes down to limited risk and leverage, which is what we just saw in that CMG example. Okay, so when you buy an option, your risk is limited to the price you pay for the option. It's not like a futures contract where it can go debit. It's like, if you pay $10,000 for an option contracts or a series of option contracts, and the worst thing that can happen is it goes to zero and you lose that $10,000. It's not like you're going to wake up and suddenly you're debit and you owe 20 grand. Okay, so so the limited risk and leverage is very, very attractive, and that's why even a lot of hedge funds and things like that do like options. Okay, and from a leverage standpoint, it allows you to control an expensive asset for a fraction of what would cost you to purchase the asset outright. Okay, so if you think that the price of a commodity or a stock is going to increase, you can buy a call option instead of buying the futures or even the stock. And if you feel that the price is going to decrease, you can buy a put option instead of shorting the futures or shorting the stock. All right? All right. So the real thing here that gets interesting, though, is most people who trade options lose money. Now I want to ask you guys, does this surprise you after seeing that example from Apple where, hey, Apple goes from 604 to 617, that almost all those options lost money, all those call options lost money, and the reason is because most people buy options and that's all they do, and they don't take advantage of the other option strategies. And you should be aware that 80% of all options expire worthless. Okay, and to make matters worse, the general public buys options without paying attention to the fair value of the option and the implied volatility, okay, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And as a result, they buy overpriced options and often wind up losing money even when they were correct about the price direction, okay? And again, we saw that very, very clearly with Apple, that Apple example, and that's why I kind of want to go through that a couple of different times. But when you get a situation like that where it gets really frustrating is when you're right and a stock goes higher. Okay, remember Apple goes 604 all the way to 617, and that 615 call that we bought for, I don't remember what it was now, but I think it was like, let's call it $12. It actually went to like $1 or whatever it was. You lost 90% of the value, even though you were right on the direction. Okay, and that's what frustrates a lot of people about options. But once you understand how options work, you're not going to make that mistake. Okay. So then you might think like, okay, now here's the funny thing. When I talk to like Tom Sosnoff on those guys, they never buy call options. Like to them, there's nothing worse than buying a call option, which I think is fairly fascinating. Now I will buy, and the reason again they don't is because they just look at it as a depreciating asset. It's like when you drive a new car off the lot, right? When you drive a new car off the lot, it's like here you got your nice shiny car. It's a Ferrari. I failed art school. So here's the exhaust pipe. Here you're driving the car and you're all happy and woohoo, got my new car, and got a beer in the hand right there and a pack of cigarettes over here. You're all excited, and as soon as here's the driveway to the new car parking lot. As soon as you drive off the lot, that car just lost $3,000 in value. Okay, and so how Sosnoff and those guys view call options is just like that. It's just like it's like buying a new car, and it's a depreciating asset the moment you get behind the wheel. All right. Yeah, and $3,000 is generous. Yeah, let's call it, let's call it $10,000. So it's like a call option there. And again, most market makers, and I didn't grow up as a market maker. I grew up as a retail trader. And most market makers I know will not buy outright calls. So that first example where we looked at, we were looking at Apple and we were looking at all those different strikes, the market makers would be horrified, okay? And the main thing is they would never, ever, ever buy an out-of-the-money call, okay? And let's talk about those here for a second, okay? But most of the time what happens is a couple things. First of all, people get excited and they see a stock that's moving, okay? So then they buy an out-of-the-money option while chasing a move, all right? And so then the question is well, okay, that's great, John. What's an out-of-the-money option? Well, an out-of-the-money option, as you may guess, is, now let's go back to the Apple example. Remember, is it 604.08, okay? And we had all these strikes. We had the 585, 590, 595, 600s, and then 605, 610, 615, and 620. We had all those strikes. Now, anything above this is out of the money. So all of these were out of the money strikes, okay? And you'll see that it said as OTM, that's out of the money, okay? And then all of these were essentially in the money, ITM, in the money. So strike prices below the current price are in the money, and strike prices above are out of the money. So these options right here, like market makers in general, would never, ever, 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 ever buy. Okay, now they'd sell them, but they would never buy out of the money options. Now the 605 is technically, it's the closest strike to the price is technically at the money. Okay, so you also hear at the money, which is ATM. So if you hear me saying like OTM options, that's out of the money. ITM is in the money, and then you have the kind of the one that's closest is at the money. But professionals never would buy these, not even with their mother-in-law's account. Okay, if they are going to buy, then they want to buy something that's in the money. Okay, and then that's when you start using your first tool to figure out where you're going to do that. So this will just say in the money, out of the money, at the money, and you'll get a copy of this, but I just explained that, so I don't have to read it over again. Okay, so let's see. So now what we want to do is talking about some of these real quick, and delta. And to me, of all of these, the first one that's most important is the delta. And the delta right here is essentially just telling you how the option price is going to move. And if you have an option with a delta of 70, okay? So in this case, it's a delta of 50. And this is really important to understand because you might wonder, it's like, okay, if the stock goes up, how much is my option going to go up? Well, if it says delta of 50, okay, what that means is that every time the stock goes up $1, that means your option is going to go up 50 cents. Okay, and that's good to know. And it's like, all right, so if you've got a delta 50 option, that means that if the stock goes up $10, your option is going to go up $5. Okay, all right, and so then the question is okay, well, first of all, where do you find that, right? So it's going to be behind that awesome drawing. So let's come in here. And we are going to format these indicators. Okay, is that the right one? Nope, I want to move it down. All right, so we're going to go back over here to Apple. And okay, so TradeStation is not showing the delta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Thinkorswim real quick. And you know what? Actually, we've been going for an hour. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick 10-minute break. So it's currently 10:10. No sound, no sound. So let's take a quick break. It is currently 10:10. Time for 10-minute break. Back at 10:20. All right, we are back. And so we're going to look at Delta next, and let me see what kind of questions we got here. Oh, Brian, okay. Oh, by the way, in the afternoon update Thursday, Tom bowed his head to you. Your pairs trade made money, and of course, you lost money on the one he gave you. That's funny. Oh, market makers won't buy calls. Will they buy puts? Yeah, they'll buy puts. I'll show you more what they like to do. We'll talk about Delta here. John, can we look at an example with futures options? Yeah, we can more towards the end, Stephen, because I mean most people in here, I'm assuming like 90% won't ever do that, so I don't want to confuse it too much. Best presentation I've ever seen. I was a market maker from first day of CBOE in 1973. Oh, awesome! When it was still in the 4th floor coffee shop. Oh, very nice, Michael. Thank you. John, so far the best webinar you have given, and I've been with you for 12 to 15 years. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry for the question again. If the stock is lower at expiration, for example, Apple 604 to 590, and I'd already bought a call option, since the stock went down, do I now owe? Oh, okay. Yeah, Elon, I'll take a look at that with you. We'll go through that. Okay, so there's a good question. So first of all, thank you for all the comments, and let's dive in here. So let's go back to, because Elon just had a good question. So let's bring up, where's Paint? Okay, so this is a good question. This is important to understand. So let's say that you bought Apple. All right, so Apple's at $604, but instead of going up, it goes down. Okay, and it goes to 590. Okay, so this is Apple. Okay, let's say that you bought a call option for $20. So let's say you bought the $600 call, or which one was $20? I think it was maybe it was the 5. It doesn't really matter, but I think so. Let's say you bought the $595 call for $20, and the stock goes from 604 to 590. Okay. Okay. So if I understand your question right, so what happened here is you bought, and the trade went horribly wrong. It didn't go up, and suddenly now the option or the stock price is actually below the strike price of $595. Okay, and I think your question is, then you bought it for $20. Is that if it falls below 595, what happens? And the answer is nothing happens. Okay, essentially, essentially in this case, if Apple is at 595, that your option would be 0. If it dropped, let's say it dropped to 570, your option would still be 0. Okay. If it dropped to 550, your option would still be 0. So the main point in here is that you don't have risk. Your risk is fixed. It doesn't matter if Apple just falls off a cliff. You don't owe money. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's true. And I could just just have an Excel spreadsheet and do this too. Agreed. No, so yeah, so I just want to make that clear because Elon's got a question here, and it makes sense because a lot of newer people ask this. So if you bought a 595 call and Apple goes to 590, okay, you don't owe extra money. So let's say you bought one option for $20. Now you had to put up $2,000, okay? Now you lost your $2,000, okay, because that $2,000 is now worth 0, but you don't owe above that. Like if it goes to 570, or let's say it goes to 575, you don't owe like another $2,000, okay? You just lost your $2,000. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So yeah, that's good to understand. Okay, so let's go back now, and we're going to look at some deltas. And it wasn't working on TradeStation, so I just fired up Thinkorswim. And I'm going to show you something too on Thinkorswim. Okay, so now this is going to be a little bit of an eyesore because I can't make these bigger like I can on TradeStation. But for delta, so here's delta. Okay, so you can there's a column that you can choose, and you can get it for the calls or the puts. Now, all delta means is that if you see like a delta 50, okay, it means the option is going to move 50 cents every time the stock moves $1. That's all based on a dollar movement of the stock, okay? So now you can come over here and say, okay, and these are the options for next week. You can see like, okay, look, wow, delta 83, 80, 77, 73, and it goes all the way down to 12. So all this means, and this is very helpful for you, is that I was telling you that market makers never buy options. Well, specifically, they never buy and rarely ever buy any options that have a delta of less than 70. Okay, so market makers in this case, let me clean this up a little bit. Let's see, color. Okay, I did not want to do that. And the reason, and I'm kind of taking a lot of time on this because once you guys get this stuff, then the plays I show you at the end of this are going to be like, oh, okay, for those of you that are newer. So when I say like market makers like Tom and those guys are like, they will never buy call options, I specifically want to show you the ones that they would never buy. And I mean, that's kind of close enough. Okay, so that's on the call side. And so here's the delta right here, all right? And essentially what they're looking at is, you know, if something's got a delta of like say 12 cents, that means that every time the stock moves $1, then this option only moves 12 cents. So Apple could move $10, right? And this option right here is only going to move $1.20. Okay, and that's going to be has to be like in one day. I mean, that's if Apple moves $10 in one day, this option is going to go from $2.01 to $3.20. Now, did you make money on that trade? Yes. But you know, you had to be dead right. I mean, you really had to catch that, and also you got to think of that this is going to expire on Friday, right? So this is all expiration for Friday. So if Apple closes below 650, okay, and right now it's at 604, if it closes below 650, that option is going to be worth 0, okay? And if Apple closes at $605 on Friday, then all of these options are going to be worth 0. And you can see right now, I mean, that one's $16, that one's $14, $11, $9, $7, $6, $4. All of these will be worth 0 if Apple's at 605, okay? All right, so to keep things simple, what you want to do is that you want to just buy, okay? If you're going to buy call options, here's the first rule I want you guys to start thinking about. If you're going to buy a call option, then you have got to buy delta 70 or above, okay? So that's the first rule, and this will simplify your life considerably. Now, you'll notice here that this one is delta 69, okay, and that's close enough. So if I am bullish on Apple, okay, and I think Apple's going to go from 604 to, 617, then the only options that I'm going to be looking at buying are in this little box here, okay? I'll look at and the higher the delta, the better. Now, of course, these options are more expensive, but what's going to happen is that if this move does happen, you'll make money with these options, okay? So that's the first and most important rule that you guys need to write down if you're newer is if you're going to buy an option, you've got to go delta 70, okay, or greater. That is mega, 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 mega rule number 1. All right. Now, I'm going to show you then an example of a directional trade. So, a lot of times it's good to talk about this kind of like, hey, and kind of this is how it works in theory, yada, yada, yada. But I do think it really helps to see specific examples. So I'm just going to look at this one here. Okay. So here's a specific trade setup that I do. I've shared this one before, so some of you may have seen this. But now if you're newer, this should make a lot of sense. Now, one of my favorite trades is to do this. They last 1 to 2 days, okay? And I use the hourly chart, okay? So the key thing here that I like to use is the hourly chart, okay? And then from there, looking for delta 70 options, okay? The other thing I want to point out, and this is important, is I'm only in this trade 1 to 2 days, okay? The longer you're in a trade, the more you've got time decay working against you. So when I like trading directional options, I like to look for these kind of short pops, all right? And this is why I like the squeeze. Now, I'm making an assumption here, and this assumption could be totally wrong, is that you guys understand the squeeze. If you don't, I will explain it really quickly. But of course, this is something I talk about all the time. But this is, I literally cannot look at a chart, okay, without the squeeze, okay? Now, the waves, what I found for me are the waves are kind of like anchor charts. All right, so I'm going to explain the squeeze real quick. All the squeeze does is it measures the Bollinger Bands, okay? And Bollinger Bands, as you guys know, they kind of expand when there's volatility, and then they contract when the market gets quiet, okay? And then they expand again when there's volatility. What the squeeze does is it is telling you those points in time when it's going, hey, heads up, the Bollinger Bands here are really tight together, okay? And when the Bollinger Bands get really tight together, guess what happens? Bam, they got to explode out again, and that means price is going to move, okay? So the squeeze to me is invaluable because it shows me the moments in time when the Bollinger Bands get so tight that they actually have to expand again, and when they expand, okay, that's when price moves. So yes, so the squeeze is what it is, it's a measure of consolidation. And it's a measure of consolidation to the point that its consolidation is so tight that it has to release energy, okay? So I think that's critical. It's a critical part of my trading plan. The waves, there's 3 waves. So you got the C wave, the B wave, and the A wave. And all they do is just measure longer-term momentum. So the C wave measures the longer-term trend, okay, whatever market and whatever time frame you're looking at. And if it's above 0, it just means that the trend is higher. The B wave measures the medium-term trend on whatever market and whatever time frame you're looking at. In this case, the trend is up. And then the A wave focuses on the shorter-term trend, so it's much more volatile. So what I look for is if I see a squeeze, okay, then I want to see a squeeze that's going to fire in the direction of all the waves. So in this case, the C wave's higher, the B wave's higher, the A wave's turning higher. So guess what? If the squeeze trigger is long, which it does right here, okay, this green dot right here is the trigger, and if the histogram at this point is above 0, it's a long trade, then I'll take it, okay? If the histograms are all pointed up and the squeeze trigger is short, I'll pass. Okay, so this is kind of like, yeah, the combo wave on toss, same thing. So this is one of the setups I like, and we'll dig more into these setups. I just want to give you an example, okay, of how to use this play. So this is a real play. I'll show you a quick snapshot of the statement, everything like that. So what happened here then is I did get a signal, okay, this is Goldman Sachs. So the first thing I got to do is decide, hey, I want to buy some calls. Well, the stock at this point was trading about $160, okay, when I got in. So I just went down the list, okay, and, you know, I didn't want to buy the 165 calls because those are out of the money, okay. I didn't want to buy the 160 calls. Those were at the money, okay. You have to go, the point is you have to go in the money below the strike in this case to get delta 70s. So the 155s in this case did have a delta 70. So those are fine to buy. And this is how you filter out. This is how you know which strike to buy. You're not going to buy the 165s. You're not going to buy the 160s, okay? In fact, let's just bring up the Thinkorswim platform again here. And, I mean, it's not going to be the same, obviously, because Goldman Sachs is not at that price right now. But if we bring up, if I can find Think. Not that one. So let's bring up Goldman Sachs here. And again, it's not going to be the same because the price has changed since then. But, you know, it would be the same thing. And I'd sit there and go, okay, it's at 94, right? So if this is at 94, then what call option do I need to buy? So I'm just going to come over here and look at the deltas, and it's like, okay, wow, there's a lot of delta ones. That's obviously worthless. We don't want to buy those. And, oh, here's a delta 85. Okay, so that's the first one I see. So there's a weird thing here with the strike, a 92.5 strike. It's no longer valid, so that's why it says not applicable. But, you know, the delta 40, I don't want that. Okay, the delta 85, yep. So that's the first one that breaks into delta 70 territory. So in this case, with Goldman Sachs at $94.16, then at a minimum, I want to buy the 90. Now I can buy deeper in the money, that's fine, but at a minimum, I got to buy the 90s. Okay, so that's how we do that. We're not even considering those other ones. So it's a nice way just to kind of let you know. It's like, okay, you know, which one I'm going to buy. So that's exactly what I did here. In this case, Goldman Sachs was trading at, you know, 160. I did exactly what I just showed you, found out that I needed to buy the 155 calls, okay, and that's what I did. All right. Now, to give you an example of another setup here that happened at the same time, this is Amazon, and you can see here it's like, okay, the C wave is above 0, all right. The B wave, though, kind of sloppy, and the A wave's going lower, and then the squeeze fires off lower. I'm not interested in this setup, okay. This to me is a no-go. I want all these aligned, okay? If we go back to Goldman Sachs, this is like a textbook example. Everything is in alignment. C wave's above 0, B wave's above 0, A wave's ascending, squeeze fires off long, I'm in. This is where patience comes in. If you're a trader and you're patient, what I call the elephants walking by, you wait for this, and this is where you put on the big trade, okay? When you get something like this, you know, if you're going to trade this, that's fine, but you're going to trade this with like a couple of contracts. You're not going to put a lot of money into it. or you're just going to pass because it's not a clean trade. Okay, so that's the first thing. I want a clean trade on that hourly. The second is that I want to see that hourly. This hourly then needs to be in the same direction as the daily chart. Okay, and if you look at this, here's here's the daily chart, and if you look at what's going on here, C wave's above 0, B wave's above 0, A wave's above 0. Now there's no squeeze, but that's okay. We're not playing the squeeze on there. We're playing on the hourly chart, but clearly there's an uptrend, right? So that's the two thing. Again, that's what you're looking for. You know, this is, you're talking about the elephant coming by. You're talking about a high probability setup. In this case, the weekly was also bullish. That's just kind of a bonus. It doesn't have to be. All right. So in this case, I want to go in the money on the calls with an option delta of at least 70. Okay. Now, if it's like 68, that's fine. You want to be 70 or above. If you're within a couple of points, that's fine. Is 60 close enough? No. You know, 67, 68, yeah, that's kind of, you know, 67's pushing it, but, you know, that's fine, okay? So what I do on this then, and this is and this is important because, you know, a lot of times people get into these trades and they don't know what to do. But what I do is this, is if the stock moves 1.75%, I look to start scaling out of the position, okay? At this point, when I got in, Goldman Sachs was at about $161. So 1.75% move means the stock's going to move $2.82. Okay, that'll take Goldman Sachs to 163, or no, a little bit more than that. I'm sorry, I can't do math. Oh no, I was right. So 163.82, right? Okay. So what you want to do is understand, and the reason I do a percent is, I'm going to use the mouse pad, the pad again because I was trying to use my mouse. So that means that Goldman Sachs would go to 163.82. So if Goldman Sachs gets up to 163.82, then you want to start selling your options, okay? Now, if the stock's going to move $2.82 and you've got a delta 70 option, okay, you just take 282 times 0.70. That means your option's going to move about $1.97. All right. Now, because this is on an hourly chart and because this trade lasts 1 to 2 days, we don't have to worry as much about premium erosion. Okay. So you can actually do this with weekly options, although I don't like it's, you know, it's a little tricky to be honest. Give yourself the gift of time. So this is how this trade worked out. Now this one was one when everything was in alignment. Okay, so I did a bigger trade on this. So I did a total of 300 contracts. I bought 100 lot at $7.27, another 100 at $7.35, and another 100 at $7.40. Okay, and that was on October 27th. On October 28th, the stock popped up, made that percentage move. And then I sold some at 905, and then some at 925, and some at 925. Okay, so for 300 contracts, that became, let's see, so an average of about, I think it turned out to be an average of about $1.85 per contract. Okay, so that's $185 per contract times 300 contracts is a nice little chunk of change. Okay. But I always like to say it's per contract. So if you had 10 contracts, you'd have made $1,800. If you had one contract, it would have been $185. Okay? So JC, is the 1.75% of the value of the stock or the ATR? So it's the value of the stock. So what I like about 1.75% is, you know, you're going to have like Apple. You know, a 1.75% move on Apple is going to be fairly big, you know, almost like $10. But if it's a $50 stock, it's going to be much smaller. So it's just it is based on the underlying. Okay, and what you can do then, and in this case, what I did is I sold off 100 contracts, sold off another 100. I started to trail my stop up, and then actually the market started coming down pretty hard. All right. So that I just want to show you that as an example. And again, let's go back and review the setup because I think the setup's important. You know, it's what I call just kind of everything in alignment, and this is a setup that you can look for on Monday. Okay, you're going to look for an hourly chart, and you're going to look for a squeeze, and you're going to look for the waves to be in alignment, right? You know, this one's ascending, and then you're going to buy a delta 70 option. Now, this is obviously an example of a stock going to the upside. You can certainly do this to the downside, and the same rules apply. Okay, you just buy a delta 70 put. All right, so let me catch up on some questions here. Jeffrey, I don't see your question. Let me scroll up here. Jeff, I don't see your margin question. If you just could retype it, I'm not sure why it didn't show up. Okay, what was, okay, got that one. Correct, 300 times 740 to enter. So 300 times 740 to enter. Did you buy another option for protection? No, we'll talk about that. Would I I just use a stop. So if the trade would have gone 2 points against me, I'd have gotten out. Aren't you limiting your potential by scaling out? Yeah, Nicholas, it's a good question. The thing is that you never know what the market's going to do next, and you could have a situation. And the reason I like to scale out is I like to continually reduce my risk. So, let's say that you're in a trade like CMG, okay? So let's say you're in a trade here, and you decide to take off some profits. I mean, you just never know when this is going to happen. When you're just going to get whacked. So as you get profits, I like to peel them off. Would you have made more had you held the entire position? Yes. But if it had turned against you unexpectedly, so the goal is to continually reduce risk while you're in that. Okay. When do you use Carolyn's fib work instead of the 1.75%? So that's a great question. So I use Carolyn's fib work, for entries, and then what I'll do on that is, for example, if the stock moves up 1.75%, so let's say that, because that's actually something I do with quite a bit. So let's say like right here, let's say I get in here, and then 1.75, and then Carolyn has fib levels up here. And let's just say that, right here is the 1.75% level. Well, I'll take out like half my position there and then move up my stop and then see if we can actually get up to Carolyn's level. But at 1.75%, I like to start taking profits. Okay. Are the waves? Yeah, so the waves are on, it's called a combo wave, and that is on the TOS platform, yes. What is the significance of the different colors? There's really no significance, honestly. I just look at if they're above 0 or below. Yeah, no worries, Jackie. We're going to talk about selling of calls in a little bit. Okay, what is the margin requirement for in-the-money long calls? So there's no margin, Jeffrey. It's all cash settled. So if you buy 10 options at $5, okay, so there's margin when you're selling options, but not when you're buying. So when you buy, it's just pure cash settlement. So, like, okay, so say a $7 option, okay? So if it's a $7 option, that means it represents 100, it's 100 shares of stock, so that's going to equal $700. So if you buy 2 of those, you put up $1,400. That means you have to have $1,400 in cash in your account, or you can't buy it. So there's no margin requirement if you're long. There is when you're short, and we'll talk about that. Does that essentially make this setup unviable using TOS? No, you can use it. You can do TOS. It's got, so if you go to Thinkorswim, how Thinkorswim works is, I've got my small lot account here for Thinkorswim. I'm trying to grow this to 100% by the end of the year. So right now it's up off of a $36,000 account. It's up 21,000, so whatever that is. 50% or something like that, just doing spreads. And you'll notice I have some long calls in here that it looks like I lost my ass on. Those are actually iron condors. I ended up making $9,000 on the ones that I sold, okay? And of course you lose, you're supposed to lose on the ones that you bought and you keep the difference. So I made $3,000 on this trade, but you can see that it shows right here, I've just got the long options, right? We'll talk more about that towards the end of this. What was I going to look at? Oh, so if you go over here to the charts, you can see here's the squeeze, here's the, the waves. You just come over here to studies, and you just go to add study, and you'll see John Carter studies. That's me, obviously. And you can just, there's the squeeze, trend, wave, and all that kind of fun stuff. If you've got like TradeStation or eSignal, we have those indicators, and we can set up those. They're at a discounted price. They're easier and more flexible to use, like on TradeStation and things like that. Chris, correct. So yeah, so that's I have a couple of big accounts that I do trade options with. Do you want all the waves to be below zero for puts? Yes. Yes, exactly. So yeah, if you want to separate the waves, there is a video on the Simpler Options site that shows you how to do that. Yeah, okay, so let's look at, we will, and you know what, and Vikram, we will get to implied volatility, okay? It's kind of, we're doing some baby steps here first. All right, so let's come back here. And now we're going to talk about we're going to start getting a little bit more advanced now, okay? So at this point, what I want you guys to grasp is this, is that one, the most important, the takeaways here from this morning are if you think a stock's going to go up and you want to buy a call, you've got to at least do a delta 70, okay? And that's really the first thing. If you think the stock's going to go down and you want to buy a put, you want to do a delta 70. If you understand that, that's going to get you, leapfrog you ahead of a lot of the other traders out there who don't get that, okay? Because if you can get your arms wrapped around that, that'll at least save you a lot of headache. That Goldman Sachs trade that I did, had I bought the wrong option on that, I would have lost money. Had I bought, the stock was at 160 and had I bought the $180 calls, I actually would have lost money on that trade, okay, as you guys saw from the earlier examples. So now what we want to start talking about is, well, what is that premium part of the option, okay? And if you guys remember when we first started doing this, we had a core, okay, kind of the real value of the option, right? And that's like the real value there. And then from there, what would happen is we had what I called the fluffy stuff, and that was the premium. Okay, it makes it look like a big eyeball or something like that. And this premium, erodes every day until it gets to expiration, and all that's left is the core. Okay, and that's if the option's in the money. If it's not, then that core, there is no core. It's just worth zero. So now the question is how is this premium calculated, and how is this premium studied and identified and things like that? And that's what we want to talk about now. So we're going to talk about implied volatility, and that's called IV. And again, you can get into this really, really deep, but you really don't need to. One of the main things I want to show you, though, because the setups that I give you actually take advantage of this naturally, and it just helps to understand it. But what happens here is that as volatility expands, okay, and this premium really is a function of volatility, okay? If a stock is really quiet and just trades sideways all the time, like like Coca-Cola or McDonald's, then the premium on those stocks is really low, okay? So you're going to have your core, and then you're going to have a little bit of premium on it, okay? But if you've got like an Apple that's kind of crazy trading, then you're going to have your core, then you're going to have a lot of premium around it, okay? So essentially, the more volatile a stock is, then the larger the premium it commands, okay? And that's really what it comes down to. So that's why you see like the Apples and the Googles of the world, their premium, goes off the charts. Now, there's another thing that'll change it too is an event, okay? And for example, on earnings, and if we look at Apple has earnings, I think on like Tuesday or something like that, and what's going to happen is, well, let me see if this will come up here. Well, here, look at this real quick. But you can see here, as, for example, IBM here popped up and got really volatile, what happened to the implied volatility? Implied volatility jumped. And one of the other mistakes that a lot of newer traders make is they just buy their options at the wrong time, okay? And if you, so for example, like, wow, IBM's going higher, I got to buy it. I think it's going to keep going, so you buy right here. You've done two things horribly wrong, maybe three. The first is you chased, okay? And chasing does not work in options, okay? So you chased, you're hosed. Secondly, IV went up. So you can see here, what I mean by that is implied volatility. As the stock got more volatile, implied volatility got higher. And implied volatility, as you remember, is what prices the premium. If over here the implied volatility is low, then the premium is going to be low on the option. But over here, implied volatility is high, then the premium is going to expand, okay? So you have the same price option, but, well, sorry, that actually looks almost obscene. You have the same priced option, but over here, because volatility is low, the premium is low, and then over here, because the premium is high, it's, does that make sense? So essentially, this premium ebbs and flows as the volatility ebbs and flows, okay? Now let's erase that as quickly as possible. So we got one. So let's try this again here. So one, if you bought an option here, first of all, you chased it, you're hosed, you deserve to lose money. Secondly, implied volatility expanded, okay, so now you overpaid. And then third, if you bought the wrong option, then you bought the wrong option, like out of the money. And this is what most people do, okay? So most people in this situation, they see like IBM's going up, that's awesome, so I'm going to buy the $130 call at the market right here, okay? So they're buying a call that's out of the money, so that's like a delta of, maybe like 40, all right? And then what happens is they honestly have no chance, because Apple could just start trading sideways and they'd lose money. It could go up a little bit and they'd lose money, okay? And of course, it could fall and they'd lose money. Remember in that example when Apple went from 604 to 617, a lot of those options still lost a lot of money even though we bought calls. Same thing here. There's only one thing and one thing only that will make money in this situation, and that is if IBM is still parabolic, okay? If it only goes up a little bit, you lose money. If it goes sideways, you lose money. And of course, if it goes down, you lose money. Okay, this is what most people do. They chase. First of all, they chase. And then because the volatility expanded and they weren't even aware of it, they overpaid for the option. And three, they bought the wrong option. Okay, so really, again, this is what most people do and the reason most people lost money. Okay, all right, so good question now. Let's go back to TOS. And let's take a look at implied volatility. Now, implied volatility, the nice thing, you can see implied volatility on any platform. And this is implied volatility right here. All right. So the implied volatility for this week is 53.93%, and this kind of just shows you the change from its average. And here it's down, and here it's down, and here it's down. All right. Now, that's F5. Okay, let's compare that with, say, Walmart. You think Walmart implied volatility is higher or lower than F5? Right, it's going to be much lower. Okay, this is part you guys can get your arms wrapped around this. You are going to be able to kick butt trading options. Because, again, most people just don't get this. So Walmart, boring stock. Implied volatility is very low. Okay, that means the option prices are very low. In fact, let me see if I can find two similarly placed. Let's look at Rackspace. Has fairly high volatility. So what I'm trying to do here, okay, I just have this idea. See if this will work. All right, we want to find two stock prices that are similar in price but have different volatility levels. So let's see, let's do IBM and let's do Panera. Not quite. Let's see. Amazon. Well, Amazon will be a good one for a different reason. Well, Amazon and IBM, that's fairly close. So, and to be fair here, we're going to look at the August options first. So what's happening here is the implied volatility is 47% for August for Amazon, and it's 18% for August for IBM. So if we look at the say an in-the-money call option here, so $190, you got to pay $4.65. Okay. Now let's look at a first strike in-the-money call option on Amazon, and that would be the $225, and look how much more you got to pay for that. Now that's not reflective that just because this is a higher price stock. That's just because the implied volatility is higher. So the premium, you're paying almost 2.5 times for the premium here, okay, than you are here. The intrinsic value is the same. You guys get that? So the intrinsic value here, let me change this real quick. So the intrinsic value is the strike, minus the current. So 228.29 minus 225, that means the intrinsic value here is $3.29. Okay, that's the real value. And the intrinsic value over here, 192.45, minus 190 is $2.45. So the intrinsic value on both of these is about the same. Yet on this one you're paying $4.65, okay, and over here you're paying $13.15. Well, all this extra is all premium, and the reason you're paying so much for Amazon is because the implied volatility is 47%, and over here it's only 18%. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so if you can get your arms wrapped around this will help very, very much. Now, I'm going to show you one more thing here that I think is pretty awesome, and this will help you a lot too. Now, I want you to, let me see if anybody can get this, if they can understand this. Some of you will. Now, this volatility here is 18% for August, and for July on IBM it's 19%. So they're about the same, right, on IBM? Well, look at Amazon. For August, it's 47%, but for July, it's 78%. Why? Why do you guys think that the implied volatility in the July contract is so out of the roof? Exactly. Okay, earnings. So what happens is implied volatility, you've got a couple of things that are factored in. One is if the stock's crazy, the implied volatility is going to be higher. And secondly, if there's a big event coming up where there's going to be a lot of unknown things, but they know that that unknown creates volatility, for example, earnings, then it's going to be factored by like a factor, jumped up by a factor of 2. So now, if we come over here and we look at In fact, we don't need to look at all these strike prices. Let's just look at 7. And look how crazy this pricing is. And a lot of people just don't understand this either. And if you don't understand this, it's just like, oh God, it could hurt. It can hurt so bad. So we're at 228. So let's say that about the at-the-money option is $230. So you can see here it's $8.85 for the call. And then here it's $10.55. Well, they're almost the same. And this one has like 20, has much more life left. This has 27 days. This only has 6. Well, why is this so jacked up? Well, it's because of earnings. And, Google, Google was crazy. Apple was crazy. In fact, we'll look at Apple. Now, let me show you a trick here if you guys don't know what this is. The market makers, this move right here, this number right here, that is the number that the market makers think that Amazon is going to move after earnings. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to, but that's what they've priced into these options. So the premium here is reflective of the market makers going, you know what, Amazon is typically very volatile after earnings. Let's price in an $18 move to cover ourselves. This means that all the market makers who are selling options, if Amazon, okay, here it is at 228, and if after earnings it jumps up $18 or down $18, they're fine. That means the premium on these is so high that these options that they sold to people, even if Amazon jumps up $18, the market makers will still make money. This is why the retail public gets so screwed. They're going like, Amazon's going to have earnings. Man, I bet it's going to jump up $18, and they buy some call options, and indeed, Amazon jumps up $18, and they make a big goose egg on that trade. Okay? Now, so what can you do? So let me go back here to F5, because I want to show you what I did with F5 last week. Well, no, you know what? I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to jump way into that. But so for earnings plays, we're going to get into selling options here pretty soon. And on stuff like that, there really is no strategy that makes sense. Okay, and I want to make this very, very clear. There is no strategy that really makes sense here to buy options right before earnings and trying to make money. Okay, and that's what a lot of people try to do. But the deck is stacked against you. There's essentially no way to make money. There's no way to, I just want to say this like loud and clear. There is no way to make money buying options before earnings on Amazon. Okay? For example, wow, it's at 228. I'm going to buy, the $230 call and, see if it just explodes to the upside. Okay? And, I mean, you can sit here and just do the math. I mean, you're paying $8 for the option. So let's say it does go up $18. So 228. Oh, I got to use my thing here. Okay, so 228 plus 18 equals 246, right? So you buy, let's call it the the $230 option for $885. All right, and it does go to 246. Now you think that, gosh, it went up 18 points. I just made a boatload of money. And so what will happen here, and this is what most people will do, is they're going to say like, well, I don't know if the stock's going to go higher or lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy one of each. So I'm going to buy an 885 call, okay, and this is what a lot of people do before earnings, and a 1035 put, okay. And the mistake and this is what I used to do. I'd get the newspaper and read the Investors Business Daily and go, gosh, I know there's going to be a big move here. I don't know which way it's going to be. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy one call, for $8. I'm going to buy one put, And then if there's a big move, I'll be able to capture it, because if it has a big move up, then my call is going to make money. If it has a big move down, my put's going to make money. Okay, so let's say that comes along and that happens. Now, again, you can see here that the market makers have already priced in an $18 move. So we're at 228. We have the $18 move, and we go to 246. Well, guess what just happened? Okay, your $8 call at this point. Okay, so you know, 246 minus 230 equals $16. So your $8 call, you made $8 on. Now your $10 put that you bought, okay, so we went to $246, so your put equals 0, okay. So in this case, you lost, essentially 10. So on that trade, you were right, okay. You bought a call and you bought a put because you thought there was going to be a big move, and there was, and you lost money on it. Does that make sense? And that's what most people do before earnings. And the market makers know that, and they price it in, and it's a sucker's game. Okay, now, yeah, even a delta 70. Now, if you guessed right, if you just bought the call, okay, you say, okay, gosh, I think earnings is going to be higher, and you guessed right, in this case, you did double your money, okay, but you totally guessed. If you guessed the put side, you lost everything. And so what happens is most people are like going, I know it's going to be a big move, so I'm going to pick one of each. All right. Now, yes, correct. So Vikram, that's absolutely right. You can actually do this, 2 and 3 weeks before, and it actually makes more sense. So if you guys understand this, then what you can do is, again, it goes into the idea of selling the options, okay? And we'll get into that. I just kind of want to get you, just understand that, this is a sucker's game doing this the day before earnings. Now, am I going to do a play on Amazon before earnings? Yes. And it's going to be on the same side as the market makers, okay? The market makers like to sell options to the public. So what I want to do on this is I'm going to trade along with the market makers, all right? And we'll get into that. It's just we're not quite ready to start talking about that, but I just kind of want to get you guys to know that, these guys are smart, and they do stack the decks up against newer traders like that. Okay. Now, one thing that's nice about the squeeze, if you guys are getting your arms wrapped around this, is that the squeeze actually brings about consolidation. Okay. So during the squeeze, what happens is the volatility actually goes lower. Okay. So the squeeze represents a boring time in the stock. That means the premium drops. Okay. And that means that the option that you buy, okay, has low premium. All right. So here's a squeeze. It fires off. You buy an option. It's got low implied volatility because the market's been quiet. Okay. And so you buy the option cheap, and then the price explodes higher. Guess what? The implied volatility explodes, and so you've got your option that you own here. You've got expanding premium. Okay. Your premium expands while you own it. So it's a double whammy. Not only is the intrinsic value going up because the stock's going up, but the premium is expanding because the volatility is expanding. All right, and if you guys get that, then you're well on your way. And what happens again is most people buy these options at the wrong time. And one of the reasons I like the squeeze is you don't have to understand this, and you can make money at it. Most people buy options, here. Like, wow, look at this big run, okay? And now we know why they're hosed there. What you want to do, and this is why I like the waves, is I want to see a squeeze, and then I want to sneak into this, okay, while implied volatility is low, and then I get the double whammy, okay? Not only does the price explode higher, but the premium surrounding that option price also expands. Again, double whammy, and that's what you want. And this course works even better on the downside. So I've been showing all upside examples, but premium expands faster if the stock is going to the downside. All right, now I don't want to scare you off. What I want to do is I want to scare you off high volatility in relation to that stock. So for IBM, a 0.28 volatility is high, but for Apple, that's not. So what you do also is just, you can kind of take a look at here, is just look at the implied volatility compared to all the different months. So for example, on IBM, it's like, okay, it's like 20%, and it's like that across the board. Okay, that's not bad. So that's normal for that stock. And then, if you look at Amazon, that's one big red flag, is that front month has such high volatility. Okay, so you're looking at this and you're just going, oh my God, 78%. You do not want to buy options in any way, shape, or form when that month is so much higher than everybody else. That just means that there's a big event. Now, the fact that the implied volatility is high, that's okay. It just means you want to be very, very careful. It means if you're going to be buying options on Amazon, you just got to wait for a squeeze. Wait for those red dots, wait for it to kind of be quiet, and that's just kind of what I call the price of admission. Some of these bigger stocks just have higher volatility because they have more uncertainty. Yeah, so the IV is relative per stock. So, if we come over here and look at Walmart, Walmart, nice, quiet, predictable stock. Wow, 20% implied volatility. If we look at Google, Google, surprisingly, well, Google just had earnings, but it's actually, not too bad. Priceline, you can see that's higher volatility, 32, 40%. Amazon typically pretty high, Rackspace, pretty high, and it doesn't mean, and to be clear, it doesn't mean that you have to avoid these stocks. It's just that you want to understand. You just got to be careful because you're going to overpay for these. And what happens is, honestly, a lot of these make better candidates for selling options. And it's on TradeStation too. It's you'll see it on the it's defaulted on there. And what's nice too is, like, so if you go to these, especially these lower price stocks, like the lower implied volatility, you come over here and it's like, wow, I can buy the in the money calls for $2.42, and then you can go out another 27 days, pay another like 35 cents, and pay about the same price. That's where you really notice the difference right there. If you do that same thing, Amazon is not a fair example because of the earnings, but let's do something, like something that has high volatility, like Priceline, or even Toll Brothers. That's got high implied volatility. F5, pretty high. So if you come over here, like to F5, and the $95 call here is $3.20. Well, with Walmart, you only had to pay another 35 cents to get the next month out, and here you got to pay like another $3. Or it's like 95 is 320, so another $2, $2.10. So that's just what that means, okay? So what I did before earnings, and you can't see the side of it here, is you can see here I've got a long call, the $110 call, and the $85 put. What I did is I actually sold premium, and that's what we're going to get to in a second. We'll talk more about that. And I just took off my short side and left my long side after I was able to collect the premium. Okay, well, it's already 11:20. Wow, time flies when we're having fun. So let's go ahead and take another 10-minute break. And I want to start now getting into more of the setups. And I'm going to go in and make sure we've got all the questions answered. So now it is currently 11:20. 10-minute break, back at 11:30 Central. All right, back in 10 minutes. All right, so we're back. Okay, a lot of questions here. Let me check. Da, 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 da. So what other events can you watch out for besides earnings? Yeah, a big announcement. Sometimes for drug companies, maybe like trials or something like that. And then you'll see implied volatility go up, like on even on the SPYs before like the employment numbers and stuff like that. Correct. Yeah. So the delta most deltas at the at-the-money option are 50 cents. I get that for the daily squeeze, but is the hourly squeeze good enough to lower IV? The daily is better, but it's okay for the hourly because it's such a shorter time frame. What's a basic too high to watch out for? I mean, you'll see sometimes implied volatility like 100%. On Bank of America, the implied volatility when it was at like $4 was 200%. I mean, it was crazy. You typically wouldn't want to buy the front month anyway, would you? Yeah, for swing trades, no. I mean, if you're doing a day trade, and the thing about it is that, I will do day trades. If we come over here, I mean, I'll show you kind of a bread and butter trade that I like to do is, if we come over here to like, say, Apple on a 5-minute chart, and, I like, one of my favorite trades are just like this, where you just have, squeeze. Okay, so here's a squeeze setting up. The waves are below zero. That's a combo wave, all right? And you can start buying puts, and with the idea that in this case you want to buy, delta 70 put, right? And then bam, it comes down and you can cover it. So, for day trades, you can do front months. You can do that week and stuff like that, but you're essentially in it for the day, so your premium decay isn't too bad. Where you really get hosed, on, let's see, I'm trying to find a good example here. This is a good example right here. So where you really get hosed when you buy, like, say you buy calls, okay, and so there's no squeeze. So that's the one thing is you want an event. But let's say that you've been watching Apple. It comes up, it pulls back, and it makes new highs. And you're like, God, this thing just keeps going. So you buy right here. Okay, so you buy. We're at 615, so maybe you buy the 615 calls, and whatever price they're at $6. Okay, so you buy them right here. The stock comes down, and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting killed, and then it comes back up, and it comes up to almost where you got them, almost exactly. But now instead of $6, you're hoping to get out at break even. Now it's like at $5.40. Okay, and that's where it really gets you, is that when a stock price comes like right here, and this is where you buy it, and then it dips, and then it comes back to that level. The option price, actually, the premium has decayed over this time to when it comes back up to the same level, it's actually dropped in price. Now, intraday, you'll see it by something like 20 or 30 cents. If it's a weekly option and it's 3 days later, it could be a matter of dollars. You could have bought it at 6 here, and then a few days later on a weekly option, it gets back to that price, and now it's at like 3. And that's what's frustrating on that too, and that's what you got to understand, that premium, okay? Yeah, it is. It's like a saw blade. So, all right, I'm spending a lot of time on this because if you guys understand it, you're golden, and then from there, you're off and running. All right, so let me check this PowerPoint here, because I do want to get into selling some options. And let's see. I don't think we need a lot of that. We've talked about a lot of this stuff. That's for doing spreads. And TradeStation is a little bit clunkier, to be honest, but they do have that new Options Pro platform. But if you're going to do options in TradeStation the old way, you just bring up the option symbol, and then you have spreads, and then you can sell it open like a vertical. And I mean, this is all at least a lot easier in Thinkorswim. But they do have TradeStation has now released a Options Pro platform, which helps quite a bit. let's see. We talked about those, and I'll come back to some of these. What was that one? Okay, so, all right, so now I know what I want to talk about now. So I want to talk about so we've talked about directional trades, and now I want to start getting into selling options. Okay, well, let's talk about this. This is an example that I've showed before, but I think it's useful just to kind of show an example of a day trade as well. And I talked about how earnings. I'm not a big fan of actual earnings, but this is a trade setup I like, and this is what it is like usually a day trade or overnight trade. What happens here is this is MasterCard, and this chart here is stretched a little bit, but this was its reactions after earnings. It had this big pop up, okay, and typically what I'm looking for is after that pop up and it starts to pull back, I'm looking for at some point that it's going to attack this level again and go higher. And what I'm looking at here, and this is where like some of Carolyn's work comes in handy, is that 1272 extension. So you come down, you come down, you come down, and what you're waiting for is like a long squeeze that has more than like a dot. Okay, now you're starting to get a long squeeze. So you see this, you start buying some in-the-money call options. We already know we want to buy Delta 70. Okay, and it's easy here because we're just going to have a stop loss at the lows. So we got a tight stop. And then our target, that 1272 extension, you just go from this high, okay, to this low, and then you just add the 1272 extension on your tool, and that shows you 387.04, okay? So then the market closes, and we're a little bit in the money, and we're going to hold overnight because it's on its way. And that's kind of my rule for holding overnight, is I want the option to be profitable from day one. Typically, if a trade's going to work out, it actually starts working out almost right away. If it doesn't, it's good just to cut it loose. So here, in this case, I did 70 contracts, and it was the $370 call, okay? And you can see that we were at 380, so I was definitely in the money. I was way in the money, so I had a Delta 70 option. And now, I had a little cushion overnight, not a lot, but it was a little green overnight. And now what I'm looking for is the next morning, we can kind of slam into those recent highs and then the 1272 extension, okay? And this is a directional play. So now the next morning, we open up, and we pop into that high, and then we head right to that 1272 extension. So that's exactly, essentially exactly what I wanted to see. And at that point, what I did is, I took 20 contracts off and booked some profits. And then I just wanted to see and give it a little bit of room here. I raised my stop up to my entry point, my break-even point, and then I wanted to see if we could actually get to the 1618. All right. And you can see here. Now we had a little bit of a, this wasn't super. Trades are very rarely do trades like completely, work out so smooth. And what happened here is we came up and we came all the way back down to the opening price, or to that breakout price, and then we went up towards that 1618. And so then I dumped the rest and closed those out. And so this is a quick trade. You're in the trade into the close. So I was in the trade for about an hour and 20 minutes. So, into the close. Overnight, I don't count it. It's just, just as you're in the trade. But the nice thing is when you're in a trade for just a day or two, your premium decay is very minimal. Okay, it's like the longer you're in the trade, the more premium decay that you have. Okay. Oh, how did you know it was gonna be a long squeeze? Well, I didn't have the waves on there, but the waves, if the waves were all above zero, which they were, that gives you kind of the heads up that it's gonna be a long squeeze. Okay. And so it's that squeeze that kind of pops you back into that. Okay. All right. So that's a trade that I like. Where was another one? Oh, here's another one too. And I want to show you this too because I think there's this misconception that to trade, you've got to be this perfect trader, and I can tell you from experience, even today, that is so far from the truth. Okay, and a question is like, can you really make it as a trader? And I'll be honest with you, there's good news and there's bad news. And the good news is that, yes, this is a valid career path, and it's being done by many people. The bad news, it's one of the most difficult careers on the planet, and the reality of it is that most people fail, okay? And I was talking to a guy yesterday, very talented guy. He knows, more about the markets in some respects than I do, but he has a really tough time trading because he hates failing at stuff. I mean, he excels at everything he does, but he hates failing at stuff, and he just cannot trade. And he actually needs to work. And here's the thing, and what people don't realize is that trading is an intellectual exercise, okay? But that's only 20% of it. What's the other 80%? And that's like emotional. And what happens is when you're sitting there, you have a trading plan, and you're sitting there going, I'm wondering if I should get in. That's not intellectual, that's emotional. What that really means is, God, is this trade not going to work again? All the feelings that are going through you. And a lot of people, they get the intellectual part down, but it's only 20% of it. What you've got to do to be successful is you've got to match your intellectual knowledge with your emotional knowledge of yourself. And I know this is probably a little esoteric right now, but it's once you get that, then you can do this, okay? And the reason this is so hard is because it's difficult, because it requires us to consistently do what is psychologically uncomfortable and unnatural. And where else on the planet would you do something like this by choice? Would you have a job where every day that you went in, everything that you did made you feel psychologically uncomfortable and unnatural? I mean, the answer is no. I mean, you'd quit. I mean, it would be like, why am I putting up with this crap? But that's what trading does, okay? And, and what happens is this never really goes away. It's just that the longer you trade, the more comfortable you become with your matching up your intellectual capacity with your emotional capacity, okay? And what happens is when you can kind of get into a zone where you're looking at things with a calm state of mind, you're kind of in that zone. And what that means really is that you can take a small loss, and if you can lose $1,000, okay, and you feel exactly the same way as when you make $2,500, then you're in the zone, okay? So making a small loss, or small, for relative for your account, if you lose $1,000 and then you make $2,500 and you feel about the same in both instances, that's when you've kind of crossed the path into a professional trader, and you've gotten your intellect and your emotions tied in. So I'll show you an example here. Now this is a trade where, okay, I ended up, and I'm showing a winning trade example here. I don't win on every trade, far from it. But this is a setup that I do all the time, and I screwed it up and made money. Okay, now that's what I want to, the point is. So this was an example from March 27th, 2012. This is that same trade. This is a bread and butter trade of mine, especially on Apple, where Apple comes up, it pulls back, you start to get a squeeze, you go long with the idea that it's going to take out this high and then go to its 1272 extension. I do this trade all the time. It's like a bread and butter trade for me. It's a directional trade, right? And so what's happening here is, and I did this trade with a couple different lot sizes. I think I was in the trading room, and I did one is kind of a large contract trade with 100 contracts, and then one is for a small lot trade, like with 30 contracts. And then I had Amazon on, where at this point I was up 26,000, and then Baidu, where I was down 16,000. So those were my trades for the day. Okay, and really I was just focused on Apple because that was my biggest position. Okay. All right, so then now you can see here, so what's happening to this trade? This trade's working out perfectly. Here's that 1272 extension. It's 614, all right? We're at 613.17. I've got nice profits here on my 100 lot trade, and in my 3-lot trade, nice profits here, and things are going well. I'm holding on to my position. And then a news alert comes out, or a news report or something like that comes out, and we get very, very close to that target. I missed it by a little bit, and we start to pull back, and we've dropped like a couple of dollars. Okay, and essentially right here at the dead lows, I remember it was that low bar right there, I choked. Okay, the consumer confidence numbers came out, and I got out. Now I made money on the trade. Okay, I made $360 per contract. Now, had I been able to sit through this, I mean, you can use a trailing, that trailing 21 period moving average as a stop, and I didn't do that. I mean, I completely choked. And had I waited 15 minutes later, you can see that it actually went up, slammed into my target, which would have been a $700 per contract gain. Okay? So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story, now, did I make money this day? Yes. Now, do I make money every day? No, I don't. I have stop losses in place and things like that. Was this a good day? Absolutely. Now, you can see here, Apple, I was scheduled to make like 65K on Apple. I panicked and made 36. So really, I lost 30,000 on Apple right there. I mean, that's one way to look at it. I mean, yeah, did I book a profit? Yep. But had I not panicked, that was happened there. So same thing here. And then Amazon, I ended up booking 18. Now Baidu, I actually had a really good trade on Baidu in terms of managing it. So was it a profitable day? Yes. Did I screw it up? Yes. Okay. And the takeaway here is that if you can get the business plan down that specifically works for trading, you can make a lot of money by not being perfect. Okay. It's just on, you don't know exactly what's going to happen with the market. The market can do a lot of different things. But, if you've got your plan in place, you can still work within that, okay? Okay, so I just kind of want to show you that. Now, I want to get into starting to sell options now. And here's the setup. So the squeeze I like to use for buying options. But what I like to do for selling options is I like to use reversion to the mean, okay, which are also known, are very similar to Keltner channels. So Brian, that's a good question. So Brian just asks, is like, well, John, had Apple kept falling, would you say you made the correct call? Yeah, I mean, it is kind of tricky. We're all geniuses in hindsight, right? My plan was, and let's go back to this. So on Apple, my plan was this, is that I would just kind of trail a stop with this moving average, okay? So I had a stop here, and had I gotten stopped here, it would have been, about a break-even trade, give or take. And had I gotten stopped, I mean, yeah, that would have been brutal, right? So it's always, again, you're always a genius in hindsight. Was I good about protecting profits? Yes. What would I have done differently? The thing about it is that, when you see like this is your target, once you get close to your target, you can start peeling off. So, in retrospect, they had this nice pop up. Once you get close, start taking some off the table. That would have been the better move there. But again, we're all geniuses in hindsight. There's times when it goes straight up, like it did with MasterCard. There's other times it could have popped up to here and come back down. You can only work with what you have. But this is an interesting example, and you certainly don't want to if you have a nice gain, you don't want to let it turn into a loss, right? Okay, so let's start talking about selling options. And one of the tools I think is important for this, and these are similar to Keltner channels. These are just called the reversion bands. But what I'm looking for here is that, when a stock kind of gets to an extreme level, it gets stretched, stretched to the upside, it just kind of has to come back. Okay, and there's two ways to play that. One is you could buy, when it gets too stretched, you could buy a put, right? And if you buy a put, you can make money as it goes down. So there's some pros and cons of buying a put or buying a call, buying a call or buying a put in the situation. Because like, for example, here, let's say it comes into this upper band and you buy a put, and then it's just like, okay, it just kind of keeps going higher, 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 and then by the time it comes down, you're actually break even on the trade. We already talked about premium decay, and by this time you've had premium decay, and now it's like, oh man, I'm not even making any money on this. So what I like to do is, in the absence of a squeeze, and essentially squeezes are about the only things I like to do directionally. I mean, there's a couple of other ones. What I like to do is kind of fade the band. So what I do is this: I just take an RSI, all right, I put 9 periods, and that's what's down here. And what I'm looking for are overbought and oversold conditions. So this is oversold, this is overbought, and it's overbought is 65 and oversold is 35. And what I'm looking for is alignment between overbought and the band. So here's overbought, okay, and then I come up here and say, oh wow, we came into the band. So this is Baidu. So great, we're at the upper band and we're overbought. Let's do a trade. Now, I could buy a put here, okay, and in this case, it came right back down to that lower band, and I would have made some money on it, okay? So what I like to do instead is, we've been talking about premium, 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 and now I want to talk about selling premium, okay? And if you guys don't know, I mean, this is essentially what market makers do, and selling premium gives you an edge because selling premium is the most forgiving way on the planet to trade. What I mean by that is, in so many other instances of trading, whether you're buying a stock, you're buying a futures contract, or especially if you're buying an option, you have to be dead right to make money, okay? Like, when you buy something, it just, in so many instances, it really just has to go up for you to make decent money, okay? And we've already seen that sometimes you buy something, and what will happen is it just may not go up very much, or it may be choppy, or of course it may go down a little bit, tying up your capital, or of course, worst case scenario, it craters. And it's an odds play, okay? And essentially, a stock can do, anything can do, it's not whether it goes up or down, okay? A lot of people think it's like, oh, my stock, I got it, it's either going to go up or it's down. No, that's not really it. So if you bought it here, the stock can go, it can go parabolic, okay? It can go up slowly. It can just trade sideways and do nothing. It can go down slowly, okay? Or it can get crushed. So it can do like 5 different things. Now the nice thing is that if you have, let's see, I mean, essentially, the only way, if you buy something, okay, especially an option, the only way you're really going to make money is with this option right here, that it continues to go up at a fast rate. You could essentially, in this instance, especially with an option, as we've already seen, is, in this case, you could lose money. In this case, you'd lose money. In this case, you'd certainly lose money. And in this case, you'd certainly lose money. Now, the nice thing about this, had you sold premium, okay, had you sold premium, then, in this case, you would have lost money. Okay, you would have lost money there. Whoops, let me make that an X. Well, no, it's okay. But you could make money here, 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 here. All right, so essentially, if you're buying, okay, so you buy an option, you essentially have a 1 in 4 shot of making money on the trade. If you sell, okay, you've got a 4 out of 5 shot of making money. All right, does that make sense? Because if you buy, it has to keep going almost straight up. But if you sell premium, it can go up a little bit, it can go sideways, it can go down a little bit, okay? And in this case, whether you sell calls or puts, you'd make money. And of course, if you sold calls, if it went down, you'd make money. Okay? So this is the thing that's really powerful about spreads. Okay, and so let me show you an example. So this is one that I did on Amazon. And for this, you can see here, you can say, like, wow, here's this big move up. Now, what do most people do here? Most people are what? They're like, oh my God, I got to buy some options here. Okay? And instead, we got into this upper band, and we got the RSI. And I didn't want to buy puts. Again, I didn't want to go directional. Instead, I wanted to sell premium. Now, so let's talk a little bit about selling premium. Now, when I say sell premium, all we're doing is, instead of buying the option, we're selling it. Okay? So let's go back to Apple, the very first example. Apple goes from 604 to 617, right? And we were looking at that, 600 and let's call it the $620 call was like $9.80. So in this case, the stock went up, but the option went to zero, right? So if you bought, it was $980, okay, and it went to zero, so you lost $980 on that trade. Now you bought that from somebody. Somebody sold that to you, okay? So the person who sold it sold that $980, okay, and it went to zero. They got to keep that $980. Now if you think about that, that can really chap your hide, because what it means is when you buy options and you lose money, somebody else is making money off of you, okay? Somebody else is making money off of you. And remember, 80% of options expire worthless, so there's somebody out there making a lot of money selling options, okay? So what's happening here is, we want to, if you're buying options, then the melting snowman fills you with dread. You're like, oh my God, the poor snowman, please hold up in this heat. If you're selling options, you want the snowman to melt, okay? Melting snowman. If you're selling options, melting snowman equals cash money for you, okay? So this is the part of option trading that gets really fun. I do directional trading. Selling is much more fun. All right, so in this case, now we got to figure out, like, okay, what's involved in selling an option, okay? Well, so what's the problem here? So let's say that I sell the $620 option for $980. And you got two problems here, one which I'll talk about in a second. But let's say that you go to bed and the next morning they announce the iPad 7, which is the most amazing thing in the world, and the stock was at 604 when you went to sleep, but the next morning it opens up at 800 because of this amazing new thing. Well, this option now at $9.80 is suddenly worth a lot of money. And if you go 800 minus 604, that's now $196. So if you did one of these at $9.80, okay, well now that option is worth $19,600. Okay, if you bought the option, you just made a killing. But if you sold it, you're screwed. Okay, so if you bought that option, you made, so 19,600 minus 980, whoops, I blew that one, 19,600 minus 980. So if you bought the option in this case, in this crazy announcement, you made a profit of $18,620 per one contract, okay? But if you sold it, what just happened is, and you bought it for $980, right? Well, if you sold it for $980 and you woke up the next morning and it was worth $19,600, you just lost $18,620. So you had a $980 investment and you just lost $18,620 on it. You just got hammered, all right? So that's why people get scared of selling what's called naked options, because if you get some crazy event like this, you could get hurt very, very quickly. So that's the first thing. So one is, like, you have the potential for almost theoretically infinite losses, okay? But secondly, the problem is margin. And you have got to have a ton of cash in your account to sell like naked Apple calls. Like, they require you to put up a lot of money, okay? The good news is that you don't need to do naked options at all in any way, shape, or form. So what you do instead is, in this case, what you're going to do, so we're talking about the 620, right? So the $620 option was $980, okay? Now, let's look at, well, hold on just a second here. Let me bring up, so here's Apple. So let's look at, so here's the real option prices here. So you've got the $620 option is $9.60, right? The $620 option. Oops. Dun, 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 right there, okay? And note here what the delta is. Okay, I'm going to do this one more time so we can actually see the delta. So we've got this. Okay, so we want to sell the $620 call, and note the delta is 36, okay? This is exactly what we want to sell, okay? We don't want to buy it, we want to sell it. Now, we already saw what happened if Apple goes to 800, right? It's like, wow, we're screwed. So what you do on this is that you can buy protection. So yeah, you sell the 620s, but you know what you can do is you can buy, like, say, the 630s as protection, okay? And that's $6.10. So what's happening now is you're going to sell something for $9.60, okay? So you're going to sell that, but then for protection, you're going to buy something for $6.10. This way, okay, if this explodes and goes to 800, then you're covered, because what's going to happen then is that, you know, this option becomes worth, you know, $19,200, but then this option that you own, you know, becomes worth like $18,600, so you're covered. So, you know, you're covered against that. So what you're doing, though, is that what you're looking for is that if Apple closes below 620, then essentially both of these expire worthless. So what happens then is that you collect the $960 that you sold, but you lost the $610 that you bought, and you make the difference, $350. So what happens on this is that's a small price to pay for protection. You guys get it? So that's what's called the vertical spread. And when you're selling spreads, okay, and when you're looking for delta 70s, that's when you're buying options, okay? When you're selling options, you're going to look for deltas of closer to like 30 and lower, okay, 30 and lower. It doesn't have to be. You can actually sell at the money, but you're not selling high delta. You want to sell low delta because it's all premium. You don't want to sell intrinsic value. You want to sell out of the money. Now, what's nice about this is that you can actually do this then in a way so you can actually see what it is you'll pay. Okay, and this is what you do. So we're going to go vertical, and now it just sets it up for you automatically. So let's say in this case we want to, what we want to do here is we want to sell the 620. You know what, we're going to buy in this case the 625 as protection. Okay, this is your stop loss. Okay, that's what your stop loss is. Now, what you can do then is you come over here, and if you're going to place this order, you're just going to come over here, go sell vertical, and don't worry about the mechanics right now, but I just want to show you what it looks like. And so let's say you did this with 10 contracts. Okay, and you can see that you can sell this for $195 credit. So let's see what this is going to look like then. And this will tell you exactly what your risk reward is, which I really like because you don't have to guess. So in this case, your max profit would be $1,950, okay? And that would happen if Apple closed below 620. You would make $1,950. You'd sell the premium, okay? And that would be the net, okay? Because what's going to happen is that $620 call that you sold is going to make money, but that $625 call that you bought is going to lose money. The difference in that is going to be plus $1,950. Okay, so say, on whatever it is, on this, you make $3,000, but on this you lose, $1,150, whatever it is, and then you keep the difference. Okay, but you want to lose money on this one because that's your peace of mind. That's your stop loss. You're going to make your money on the premium. Now it does show that your max loss is $3,050. In this case, your max loss would be that if Apple, so in this case, if Apple closes below 620, you get max profit, and if it closes above 625, you get max loss. And then there's a little gray area in between. If it went to like 623, then you're kind of right in the middle. Now, when this says max loss, first of all, it doesn't mean that you have to lose that much money, okay? So if we come back here, what happened is we sell the spread for $1.95. You can put a stop loss on the spread as well. You can say, all right, I'm going to put a stop. If this spread gets to $2.95, I want to get stopped out. So you can sit there and say, all right, I'm going to risk $1,000 on this, and you can place a stop on the spread. Now, so this is a bear spread. So essentially, you hear bear spread and bull spread. All a bear spread means is that you think you want, you're looking for the stock to go down or sideways. Okay, and a bull spread means that you think it's going to go higher, so you're going to sell puts. So if you think it's going to go down, you're going to sell calls. And if you think it's going to go up, you're going to sell puts. Now, what's nice about this is that market makers love doing this, so the volume's high and the spreads are tight. So it's very easy to get in and out of these trades. So now, let's come back here. And we can look. So here's that trade on Amazon. And so I sold the $240 calls, okay, 100 of those, and then I bought the 245s as protection. Now if you come over here, you're going to see like, wow, man, you're getting hammered on these $245 calls. Well, you want to, okay, because you sold, the one that you sold is going to make more money than the one that you bought. So in this case, you keep the difference. So, and I sold the spread for $250, so my max gain on this is $25K, and then my max loss is also $25K. So now we're kind of getting down to the brass tacks here of what I want you guys to understand. Okay, so we've covered a lot of stuff, but I actually just want you to understand a handful of things, and here's what they are. One, if you buy an option, buy when the market is quiet, i.e. in a squeeze, and buy a delta of 70 or better. Okay, that's the first thing. Two, and then the second thing is, then you have got two plays here. You're going to either buy an option or you're going to sell, okay? So if you sell an option, sell ATM at the money or OTM out of the money, okay? Buy ITM in the money. When markets are volatile. And always buy the next strike out for protection. And this is it. This is all you have to know. Let me squeeze this on one page here. So if you get these 2 points right here, you will know, this is all you need to know, first of all. This is all you need to know about options. And if you understand these 2 points, you will be trading on the same side of the market makers. And there's all that complicated stuff out there that you do not need to know. And this is all you need to know right here. Okay? So let me see if that sinks in with you guys. And we're gonna do a couple more examples, but I just want to show you this is the only 2 things you need to know to trade options. Okay? And the main thing here is up here is the main thing is it's just think of it like this way. Quiet equals buy delta 70s, okay? And then this one is volatile equals sell delta 50 and lower, and this is by delta 70s and higher. If you understand these 2 concepts right here, this is all you need to know about option trading. Yeah, and James just pointed out exactly. I mean, if you know this, I mean, you'll actually know more than like 75% of stockbrokers and money managers. All right, so let me see what kind of question. I mean, this is, I mean, seriously, guys, these 2 points right here, this is all you need to understand, and you will be able to make a living trading options. And we're going to look at some more examples, but I just want to make sure that you understand this. Max risk on spread is too high, so you must mitigate with a stop or hedge. Yes, absolutely. You can. I definitely use stops on the spreads. Number 2, you want a delta of 30 or less. Patricia, it can be 50. That's okay. 30 is better, but it can be 50 or less. What parameters do you use for the VIX to determine whether or not the market's volatile? Joan, that's a great question, and we will come back to that. We'll do that in a few minutes. John, any beginner option trader that is listening to this is the luckiest newbie on the planet. You'll have easily saved them 20 to 30K, not to mention a lot of heartache. Thanks, Beverly. I mean, that was the whole point of this, and I'm glad that that seems to be what we're accomplishing. I've read many different books, and you're right about complicating option concepts. This is the most clearly explained options ever for me. Oh, thanks, Stephen. Great summary. Thanks, Gary. Yeah, you can. Now, that one example that we did was 30, but it's essentially 50 and lower. Does premium decay speed up as it gets closer to options expiration, or is it even across the period? Great question, Craig. And by far, it speeds up as you get into expiration. Okay, it's kind of decay happens like this. Like, let's say that here's expiration right here. Okay, and here's where we are now, and this is 0, and let's say premium is going to be 0 at options expiration. It kind of goes like this. It's like this slow slope, and then like the last couple days it goes drop, drop, drop. So the closer you get, yeah, the faster it goes. How do you use the implied volatility with the TradeStations platform? We'll talk a little bit about that. Yes. Okay. So Vikram just pointed out something too. Is that one more critical thing on this as well? In fact, it's actually worth kind of adding another number here. Well, I'll shrink that in a second. And it's this buying, try to get more time. Selling, you want less time. Okay, so what that means is that, you know, if you buy, try to get more time, that is buy, like say, you know, 20 days out. Selling, you want less time, that is sell premium, you know, like 5 days out. So that's a good general, you know, good generality too. Is higher than 70 better? Well, yeah, Lee, it's nice. I mean, I actually know market makers that say buy only delta 90 or better. So yeah, high. Just think of it this way: if you get a delta of 90, then anytime the stock moves $1, your option's moving 90 cents. So 70 is kind of like 70 works. If you can get an 80, great. You know, if you can get a 90, great. Now, there's a lot of questions coming up like how do you set a stop on a vertical spread and things like that. Now, for those of you, I don't know how many of you guys are members of the Simpler Options site. On the Simpler Options site, Henry has put together videos on TradeStation and Thinkorswim that show everything. How to place the orders, how to place stops. He's got an amazing breadth of knowledge about all that kind of stuff. I hope this gets me on a profitable, consistent track. Bobby, this is exactly what I do. I mean, it's exactly what I do. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of other things. I'm going to show you a couple of other things here, but I just want to make sure if you guys grasp this, you're there. I mean, this is all you need, and I'm just going to show you a couple of renditions of this. Also, during earnings, theta isn't much of a factor because it's priced in. Yeah, well, earnings, you want to sell. That's why. Just the thing is like just before, if it's the day before earnings, for example, we sold spreads on Google and F5 the day before earnings. Do you ever look at leaps? Not very much. I'm more of a shorter-term option trader. Oh, thanks, Jackie. Yes, I started with the Simpler Option site in March, and you were great. The room was wonderful. Looked at so many others, but yours was like coming home. I appreciate it. Yeah, and there's some things in there we still want to improve in terms of, you know, the trades and stuff like that as well. But it's I've been really excited about it. Okay, still. All right, still trying to understand in the money and out of the money. Does in the money and out of the money change sides of call or put? Yeah, just think of it this way. So in the money just means that you, like, here, this is going to be easier just to show it on this. So if we come back over here, and it's going to be different whether it's calls or puts. Okay, so let's just say that this is 605. So all the calls are in the money, need to be below, essentially 605. So all the in-the-money calls are going to be below 605, okay? And all of the in-the-money puts will be above it. So it just kind of shifts. So, so here's the 605 level. So for the call side, anything below 605 is in the money, but anything above 605 is out of the money. All right. So this is out of the money on the call side, and then this is in the money. On the put side, it's the opposite. These are in the money, and then these are out of the money. And all this means is where they are in relation to the current price. So the current price is essentially $605. So all the call options that are below 605 are in the money, meaning they're more valuable, meaning they have, intrinsic value. Anything above 605 is out of the money. Okay, they're literally out of the money. It's all premium. And of course, on the put side, since you're betting on it to go down, then anything above 605 is going to be in the money, and anything below 605 will be out of the money. Okay, and then this is, if you hear at the money, ATM, that's this level right here, just where the closest strike to where it's trading. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. Oh, good. Glad that helped. How do you feel about breaking the room up into categories like beginner, intermediate? It's a good question, Kevin. I mean, I think, typically, the strategies we do in the room are essentially we're either long a call or we do a spread. So, and so if we come back here, okay, and let's say let's come back here and look at this chart. So here on Amazon, we're selling a call credit spread, okay? So what we're doing here is, wow, we came up to 240, so we sold the 240 call, okay? And then we bought the 245 as protection, okay? So we sold the calls. Now, if it's down here, we're going to sell the puts. In this case, we'd sell the 205 and buy the 200s as protection, okay? So as it goes up, that put credit spread, we make the max profit. And as this comes down, the call credit spread makes the profit. And what you're seeing here is that it's the mean, right? So when you get extended from the mean, you sell put spread, and then when it goes back to the mean, it expires worthless. If you get extended to the upside, you sell a call spread, and as it comes back to the mean, it expires worthless. Well, guess what? You know what this is? Let's say you do these at the same time. Let's say that, we're at the mean, and you decide to sell the 240, 245, and also the 205, 220 at the same time. You know what that's called? That is called an iron condor. So a lot of these fancy things that you hear are just these spreads. It's just different renditions of it. So you can do a call credit spread or a put credit spread, or if you happen to do one of each on the same stock, now you've got an iron condor. And that's all an iron condor is. Okay. Now, yeah, good question. So, yeah, and the thing is, here's what's nice about this. You actually don't have to close this all at once. You actually don't have to place an quote-unquote iron condor order. You can say, you know what, I'm going to do a put credit spread, and then a couple days later, I'm going to add a call credit spread. Well, now you have an iron condor, okay? If you want to close it all at once, you can, or you know what, you can take this one off, and now you're just back to, instead of an iron condor, you have a put credit spread. But all an iron condor is just a call credit spread and a put credit spread. Again, you already know what, if you know what a put credit spread and a call credit spread is, then that's all it is. Okay, so let me show you guys. So I'm going to show you guys now. I'm going to jump into a few advanced concepts here real quick, okay? But I think you guys can handle it. I think it'll help. I'm going to show you what I did with Google earnings this week. Okay, so that means I got to find my presentation. And if you're overwhelmed, don't worry. I mean, this is, again, the thing I want to emphasize is that this is all you need to know is those bullet points I showed you. I mean, again, this is all you need to know. If you're going to buy an option, just make sure that the market's quiet, okay, and you're buying Delta 70. That's it. That's all you need to know. If you're going to sell an option, okay, then you just want to sell something. You want to actually, and I think here's the key thing here, okay, quiet. Let me try so quiet equals buy, volatile equals sell. And that's it, okay? If stock's going crazy to the upside and it slams into resistance, you're going to sell calls, okay? And if it's crazy and it goes to support on the downside, you're going to sell puts because you're looking for it to then bounce and you're looking for this to come back. And if it's quiet and looking to move and the waves and the squeeze are telling you higher, then great, you're going to buy it in the money call. That's all you got to do. So what happens now is all you got to go back to is just looking at the charts, okay? And if you look at the charts and say, here's a, let's look at an hourly chart here of Apple. It's like, wow, here's a squeeze, the wave's above zero. I'm going to buy some in-the-money calls here, okay? It's quiet. Things are kind of trading sideways. So I'm going to buy some in-the-money calls, and we pop up, and I'm going to take off some profits, okay? Same thing here. Wow, here's a squeeze. I'm going to buy some in-the-money calls here. Oh, it pops up, okay? Then the other side of it, if it just gets, if there's like a lot of, you see that it pulls back to support, and there's not really a squeeze, then you can sell a put credit spread here, sell premium. And that's it. That's all you got three things to do. One, you're going to buy an option, right? And then two, you're going to either sell calls at resistance, okay? Or three, sell puts at support. That's really all you're doing. And when we say sell calls, we always call it a spread because the spread is your stop loss. But what you're really doing is you're selling a call. The one that you buy is just your protection, okay? So again, buy when it's quiet, or sell call spread at resistance, buy a put spread at support. That's all you got to do. So let me show. So with that being said, let me show you an example. If I can find it. Is that the one? Okay, so I want to show you this one on F5 that I did. And we just did this the day before. And this is a fun one to do on earnings, but you saw, so the expected market maker move was, let's call it $7, okay? Now, the stock, when we put the trade on, was like at 98. So what I wanted to do is then I wanted to go up $7, okay, and sell calls, and then go down about $7 and sell puts. So you can see here I sold the 105 call, okay, and then I bought the 110s as protection. So I bought those, I sold those. And then on the downside, I sold the $90 put, and then I bought the 85s as protection. Okay, and that's the real trade here. Is this? It's your selling premium. So I sold the 105s and I sold the 90s. Okay, and then of course you buy the 110 as protection, just in case it goes ape nuts crazy to the upside. Bought the 85 as protection, and then your goal is that once earnings are released, it actually stays in between. If it stays in between 105 and 90, you get max profit. And so what happened here is I got max profit very quickly because the next day it gapped down like 3 points and didn't move very much. So you can see here, so the only ones I'm really worried about here making money on are the ones that I sold. So I sold the 105 call, bam, it's only worth a nickel here, okay, and it jumped up to $1,000. And then I sold the 90 put, it's only worth, well at this point it's worth 28 cents, so it's got a little premium left, and that's worth $782. That's all I'm concerned about if those make money. Now my protection, the ones that I bought, of course, they get hammered. But since I sold the one that's closer, it's got more premium, it's always going to make more. So yeah, you're going to lose money on the ones that you buy, but you're going to make more money on the ones that you sell, and you keep the difference. Okay? And all this is an iron condor. You could have just done one. You could have just done the put credit spread if you wanted to, or you could have just done the call credit spread, okay? Or if you do both, then it's just called an iron condor, and that's that. And let me see what the next slide was on here. Now it's interesting here. So okay, so I want to show you this too. This is key. So look at the profit right here. So the profit here, oops, is $987.50, right? Now look at the stock. Stock's $95. Now an hour or a couple hours later, its stock jumped from $95 to $100. Okay, it went crazy. It started doing this big move. Well, look at our P&L actually really hasn't changed. Now the stock just jumped up $5. Okay, but because we sold premium so far outside of what was going on, we sold the 105s, we sold the 90s, nothing really happened. So we actually are kind of opened at near max profit, and we just kind of stayed there. That's one of the nice things about selling premium. Okay, and this is kind of why too, is because we sold such high implied volatility, and that was just right, and that's what happens right before earnings. It means the premium was so out of whack, you know, the poor bastards who bought it just didn't have a chance. Yeah, so that's a good question. So doesn't an iron condor guarantee at least max profit on one side? Yes, it does. Ideally, you'll get it on both sides, you know, but what happens is that you're going to get max profit on one side. The question is, you know, are you going to be able to get it on the other side as well? So what we're going to be doing then in Chicago, I know a lot of you guys are going to Chicago next week. So in Chicago, this is what I'm going to be talking about then, is that, you know, you guys now have the basics of how options work. So then in Chicago, we can really dig into and show you different examples of, you know, when do you use a put credit spread? When do you use a call credit spread? And how do you manage those if things don't go as you expect? Okay, like what happens if it gaps up against you? What are some different strategies you can do, you know, to kind of mitigate the damage? So we'll be looking at directional setups and put credit spreads. But we're just going to really dig into it because I want you guys to look at all the different setups that we can do. And so what's great is for those of you that are going to Chicago, now that you've got this base, we're going to be able to just dive in, and you're going to understand it's like, oh, wow, of course we want to sell premium there, yada, yada, yada. And I think so it'll be really helpful that way, okay? Well, no, the Chicago seminar, we're going to keep that one we're going to keep that at essentially its price. I believe if you're a member of Simpler Options, you are able to go for the member price, which is $9.97 instead of $19.97. The CDs on that one, because it's a 3-day seminar, we're going to keep that at $9.97 as well. I mean, I've seen option seminars that are priced at like $5,000, and this is going to have way better information than those. But yeah, it's not going to be, I mean, some of our DVDs we do give away, like, hey, here's a discount, you know, $197 and stuff like that, but we're not going to do that with the option stuff. It's just too good. It's not to knock the other stuff that we're doing. It's just, yeah, so on the small lot course, we're going to cover some option trades, but it's going to be more on futures. So the August small lot course is going to focus more on futures, and then you know, we may do something like, for example, you could do a put credit spread here, but we're not going to go into the mechanics of what a put credit spread or anything like that is. How reliable are the market maker move numbers? They're fairly reliable, but there sometimes are moves outside of that. You know, they're not they can only price in what they think is going to happen, but of course they don't know what's going to happen. Now, yeah, so these by the way, and all these strategies work with futures as well. So, for example, I mean, everything I just told you, you can do, and in fact, one of the things that we'll be doing, you know, even in the managed accounts is, whoops, we're going to be doing iron condors and spreads on the S&Ps is one of the strategies we'll be doing. But, you know, if you're looking at, say, you know, the S&Ps on a daily chart, and you know what I'll be doing is, for example, like, hey, okay, we're going to sell a put credit spread here in the S&Ps, okay, or if it comes up to resistance, we'll sell a call credit spread. Right now, the crazy market is soybeans, and you can do a couple different things here. One is just buy a call. If you think this thing's going to go crazy, you know, just buy a call, although the premiums, of course, are really jacked up right now, or you could sell a put credit spread. Now, the main difference between futures options and stock options is this. So for a stock option, one option equals 100 shares, right, for stocks. But for futures, one option equals one futures contract. So that's the main thing to understand. It's not like one equals 100 futures contracts. And how you'll see, and futures options are a little goofy. And if you've never, you know, looked at them, I mean, we can look at them real quick here. There's not a great place to find quotes for them, to be honest. You can, you know, go to like Thinkorswim and just say, okay, let's go ES, and you can get the option chains there. So, you know, we're at 1358. So, in fact, let's look at these here. We don't need to look at 20 strikes. So you'll see, like, you know, the 1360 is $12.50. And what that means, and how you got to figure that out, is you got to just take a calculator and say, okay, 1250 times 50, which is $50 a point. So you'd have to pay $625 for that option, you know, to hold on to that one contract. Now, you can get day trading margin for that on the actual futures contracts. You don't have to deal with the premium. So for futures options, a lot of times I'm not big into buying futures options. I'd rather just buy the futures contract, but I will sell the premium absolutely all day long. Okay. And, you know, what's even goofier then is if you go and look at soybeans. So the same thing. Now soybeans, of course, the premium right now is a little jacked. But if you're going to buy yourself, boy, that's not what I wanted to do. If you want to buy, say, a soybeans contract, then what you're going to do is the same thing. You're going to say, like, okay, you know, we're at 1687. I want to buy the 1760 call. It says 3875. Let's just round up to 39. So 39 times 50 Okay, it's 39 points times $50 a point, so you'd have to pay $1,950 for that one call option. And of course, you guys know how that works now. It's got to go well above 1760 for that to get in, get in the money and get a lot of bang for your buck. And that's how it works. And these bid asks are honestly delayed because these are all pit traded, so it gives you an idea. Never do a market order for a futures option, but you can trade them, just do limit orders and things like that. So hopefully that helps real quick there. Is there a place? There's actually, I believe actually, so on the seminar up in Chicago, it might be sold out for the live event, or there might be like 1 or 2 seats left. I mean, I'm sure they can put in like another chair if you really want to go. There's a webcast available. If you go to this link, it's just simpleroptions.com/go. I'll just show you real quick. And Tom Sosnoff's going to be there for just a little bit. He's just going to do a quick talk, but Carolyn will be there. But go to, and you can call the office here too, /go, or call. We got a couple of people here at the office today: Mandy, Daryl, Brian. And if you want to go to Chicago, I mean, it's going to be a great seminar. And you can check with them too if there's any live spots left. And you can see on the website, I mean, it is $19.97, but I mean, since you guys are part of this class, I'll honor the $9.97 price for you guys if you want to do it. So actually don't go to the website, because then you're going to get charged $19.97. But if you do want to go, you can attend live, or I know a lot of you guys in here are already going, but a couple people were asking if you go live or via the web, it's the same price. If you do it here, it's $19.97, but if you want to call the office, you can do it for $9.97. But yeah, I mean, it'll be, what's great is, getting to talk with you guys. By the time we hit the ground running on Friday, because what I'm going to do is on Friday, I'm just going to live trade Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to go through a lot of different examples of different types of plays and strategies, and then that way, if you're in the simpler options trading room, etc., you'll know exactly what it is that we're looking at, okay? And then, yeah, and either way, whether you go live or webcast, you'll get a copy of the DVD. Now the DVD, we don't film it, it's just recording what's on the computer screen, so there won't be like a film, which I think is better because you want to see the data that's on the screen, okay? Do you trade Forex? Yes, actually I do trade Forex. I use the squeezes on Forex. Yeah, I mean, options on futures are kind of derivatives of derivatives. Yeah, and the thing is too, now we're going to do an event in Las Vegas at the end of October, which will be fun. That'll be a little bit more expensive seminar just because it's Vegas. There's going to be more costs involved. However, for everybody that goes to Chicago, just so you guys know, we haven't told people this yet, but if you go to Chicago, you're going to get, then you decide you want to go to Las Vegas, you'll get a discount on Vegas. I don't know what it is yet, but Vegas is going to be a higher price seminar just because it's Vegas. So it'll be, but we'll have some price like, hey, if you're in Chicago and you want to go to Vegas, some price that's going to be like the best price compared to any other prices we're going to offer, just because you've already been to Chicago, right? You're going to see, it'll be updated information, but it's more about just, if you wanted to spend the time in Vegas as well. And then we're starting to do mentorships here in Austin on options too, so we'll talk about that. But anyway, I just wanted to, so you asked that question, so there you go. So let's go back here and look at the options now. Vegas will be fun. I want to actually do a Texas Hold'em tournament in Vegas too. I think it'll be fun. Okay, so what else was I going to show you guys? There was something else. Oh, one more example I want to show you guys, because now, again, the whole idea is that if you understand it, then you're going to understand options. And one of the best ways to understand options is trading them on expiration day. And I talked about this the other night, but I want to go over this Netflix example again. Because now that you guys understand everything I just showed you, this should really hit home. And so here was the trade, if you guys remember this, okay? What happened is Netflix gapped up. You know, this was $85. It gapped up. It went up to like, you know, $86.70. And at this point, what I was looking for is that we could come back to 85. And then what I thought would happen is that we would come back and retest the highs and possibly even take out the highs. Okay, so that's what I was looking at. That's what I was looking for. Okay. So let's see what happens here. And what I wanted to do here was do a spread and a directional. Okay. Now it's expiration day. So obviously this is a day trade. Implied volatility is 62%. That's good. That's high premium. So on the pullback to 85, both the 85 puts and the $85 calls were selling about 95 cents. So what I did here is I wanted to just, you know, I never like to buy premium, but I just wanted to buy one option for 95 cents just to see how fast it would erode. But then I sold like 30 puts. Okay. So now you got to look at the risk reward on this. Okay. Because if you look at, here's what most people do wrong, is they look at the risk reward and they don't understand it. So would you want to buy the calls for 95 cents, okay, with a target of $3 and a max loss of 95, or sell the $85 puts, okay, and buy the 80s as protection for 95 cents with a max loss of 405, okay? Because that risk reward looks jacked now, right? And in fact, you know, I mean, here's what the choice is, and what a lot of people, you know, this is how they make their determination, is they sit there and go, okay, on the directional play, I'm essentially risking $1 to make $3. On the spread, we're risking $4 to make $1. What the, you know, as they say, what the heck? Does this make any sense? Isn't this a horrible risk-reward ratio? Okay, so what happens is a lot of people look at that and say, God, selling a spread is stupid because the risk-reward ratio is so bad. All right, well, let's take a look at this. So here's what happens. And this is why, if you're not sure of a trade, like, and the thing about it is that on any setup, even if it's a squeeze, okay, on any setup that you're planning to do a directional trade on, like a buy a call, for example, you know, just buy a call, consider a put spread instead. Okay, the question is why? Okay, why would you want to do that? Well, this example shows why. And the reason for it is this. So here's what happens. So Netflix gaps up, it comes down just like I thought it would. And in this case, what I did is I focused on buying a put credit spread. I also bought a directional call. Man, we start cruising right away, and then we just kind of sputter around. Now you got to remember, if we close below 85, that call expires worthless. Okay, and I want it to be above 85 for the call, and I want it to be above 85 for the put spread. So now we're just kind of floundering, and then by like noon we pop back up. Oh, things look good, and then we just, you know, right. So now what happened to these trades? Let's take a look, because this trade it went horribly wrong. I mean, I would have bet money, and I did bet money, that Netflix would at least retest the highs and possibly go higher. That's what I was looking for. And what did Netflix do? It did exactly the opposite of what I thought it would do. Okay? Now, if we look here, remember, we're looking at the risk-reward ratios and everything like that. So here, we dropped to 84.20. Okay, it's down on the day. Now, this credit spread that I sold for 95 cents is going against me. It's $1.16. It's going against me by 21 cents. That is not bad at all. Okay, in fact, it's holding up really, really well. I'm only down $195 on 30 contracts, so that's good. So what about the call options that I bought for 95 cents? Those things are getting hammered, okay? So now, here we are at 84.40. I want to show you something that's really important here. So we're at 84.40. The stock is still doing exactly the wrong thing. The call option that I bought, I only bought one contract because I knew what I was getting myself into. I bought these for 95 cents, and they're trading at 24 cents. They are getting killed. They're getting annihilated. Okay, what about my put spread? Remember, my put spread, I want it to close above 85. Okay, what's going on here? I'm actually making money on it. Okay, are you guys getting this? This is what happens when you sell premium. When you sell premium, okay, this is like your dream, if you're a guy, this is like your dream girlfriend, okay? When you sell premium, it is very forgiving, okay? When you sell premium. This means that you can sell premium and you can be wrong and still make money, okay? Here, I was wrong and I got my ass handed to me on the directional calls. And here, I was wrong and I'm still making coin on the put spreads, okay? Does that make sense? If you guys just got that, again, you're going to be ahead of like 90% of all traders out there. And I want you to sometimes even question when you're about to do a directional trade, say, maybe I should do a spread instead. Okay. Now, one of the reasons people don't like doing spreads, and this is one of the things that, to be honest, I resisted spreads for a while, is what happens is something like this. It's like, okay, let's say that I buy 10 Apple calls, 10 Apple calls for $10, and it goes to, the call goes to $17, and so I just made $7,000 on this trade, okay? Now, had I sold, like, say, 10 Apple puts on a spread for $250, then essentially my max profit is $250, and say I got my max profit, then I would have made $2,500. So my big thing was always like, God, directionally, if I'm right, I'm going to make $7,000. If I do a spread, if I'm right, I can only make $2,500. That doesn't seem right. Well, duh. At some point, I figured out that then I could just sell 30 on the put spread because your risk is the same, and then that would equal a profit of $7,500. So what happens is once you figured that out, and the margin is about the same and everything too, is that you can actually do spreads at a higher quantity than the directional and get the potential same profit. And here's the kicker, okay? On the directional, the only way you're going to get this profit is if Apple has that big move. On the spread, you can get the same profit if Apple just trades sideways. And that's your take-home point right there. Again, why? Because spreads are forgiving. Okay? And that's one of the things that I really like about spreads. And if you look here at what eventually happened in Netflix, is here Netflix popped back up to 85, okay? Now the call options, remember the call options I bought for 95 cents, well now they're back at 61, okay? I'm still down 33% on this, but look at the spread. I mean, the put spread is taken off because this thing that I sold at 95 cents is now at 59 cents. And as it goes down, that's good for you. So that's what I'm talking about here. Netflix is doing nothing right. I mean, I thought this would be at 88, okay? At 88, I'd make a lot of money on this. I was wrong. I'm losing my ass on this side, and I'm making coin on this side. Okay? If you can understand this example, then suddenly you're going to be like Tom Sosnoff going, why would I ever buy an option in my life? Now, I say that. I will still buy options. I still like to buy calls. I still like to buy puts. But there are times you'll see me in the trading room going, you know what? I think this is going to be a good move here, but let's go ahead and sell a spread instead. In fact, I should patent that saying. That should be a bumper sticker. I'm going to put that on my car, and it's going to say, all I'm going to do is to say, sell a spread instead. And then people will just wonder, oh my God, who is that crazy guy driving that car? But I want you guys to get your arms wrapped around this. It's okay to do directional calls and puts the way that I showed you, but consider just selling a spread instead. Sell a spread or you'll be dead. So now the next question is, let me come back here to F5. Do you close out the spreads before expiration? Here's what I do. Now you're going to look at this F5 trade. Now you guys remember I just showed you the screenshot of F5. In fact, let's look at this again. And this was actually just from this week. Okay, so this was from yesterday actually. Really strange. Yesterday morning I was in Chicago, and I was doing this in Chicago. So this is a screenshot of my F5 trade from Friday morning in Chicago, and you can see here I sold the $105 call, right, -5, and I got, you know, the 110s as protection, sold the 90 puts, got the 85s as protection. Okay, now you can see here I was down on my long calls, of course, and I made money on my short calls. Now, what did I do? Did I close out this entire trade? No. What I did, and this is a nice little kicker here, if you look at my, if you look at it today, all I have, you'll notice that my 105s, okay, my calls, and my 90 puts are gone. Okay. Now, here's a thing in Thinkorswim that is pretty cool. Now, these were worthless, okay? But what Thinkorswim will let you do is buy them back for a nickel for free, for commission free. So what I did is I bought them back for 5 cents at 0 commission. And what happens with that, I don't know if TradeStation does that, honestly, Nicholas. I don't know. I don't think they do, but I'm not positive. But what happens is you just took all your risk off the table. Now, the chances that these expire worthless are very, very high. But there's always some crazy thing that could happen. Like say F5 jumps up, you know, 40 points in the last 5 minutes due to a takeover. Well, suddenly you just got killed on this, okay? So, but you're able to buy it back for a nickel for free, and now you have no risk. In fact, you leave your long ones on for just that reason. Yes, this is showing a loss, right? But remember, net, we made plus $987 on this trade. So we made like plus $1,900 on the ones that we sold, and then we lost $870 on the ones that we bought. So now all it shows is the loss. We've already booked the gain. But there's no reason to take these off, okay? And plus, if you're short, if you got these options, you can be assigned the stock. If it suddenly does this, you could be assigned the stock. All kinds of risk. But the long options, you have just the opposite risk. First of all, if they expire worthless, that's fine. You're not going to be assigned the stock. Secondly, if there is some crazy event, guess what? Your option is going to go from a nickel to like $10. So you actually have no risk holding on to the long options. And every once in a while, you'll have some goofy event where, you know, this goes from being worthless to maybe it's worth $1, okay, and you can close it out and get that dollar. So a lot of times you can leg into these as a spread, and then when you get to max profit on the short side, just buy it back, and now you've got a free lottery ticket, Okay, you guys understand that concept, a free lottery ticket? Yeah, these expired on Friday, but what happens is they clear out of your account on Monday morning or Sunday night. Yeah, so nothing's going to happen to these. These are going to expire worthless. But I did this on Friday. Yeah, so you have a very low probability lottery ticket if something crazy happens. But what's nice too is if you get to a point where, say on Wednesday, if on Wednesday you can buy back the short side for a nickel, then you've got like, potentially 2 days of lottery ticket action. So anyway, if you don't understand this part, don't worry about it. But it's just a little bit more advanced strategies. And in Chicago, I'm going to spend a lot of time, going over some of these strategies like that. But they're all based on the basis that we just set up right now. All right, so what I want to do now, because we're almost done, make sure you got all your questions answered. But let's look at a couple of plays here. And I just want to kind of get your thought process on it and see, what you would do. So all right, so here's Baidu, and the stock here, it's in a, it's been in a downtrend. It comes down, it comes back to the mean, comes down, comes back to the mean. So let's presume that it's going to come back to the mean. Okay, what would you guys do here? Okay, we closed at $110.25, and I want you guys to pick one play that you would do here. I'm already telling you this is what. Let's assume that Baidu is going to go back here. What would you do? All right, I see a couple different answers. You guys keep typing it in. All right, I think you guys have the general idea. A couple of you missed. So you think it's going to go down. All right, so what you want to do then is you want to sell the at-the-money call, which in this case is 110. So you're going to sell the at-the-money call. You're going to buy the 115 as protection. Oops, 115. All right, so you're going to sell a call credit spread, and then you're hoping, Baidu comes back down to this lower level, then you can close it out, for potentially max profit. Yep. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. You got it right, Gary. Yeah. Call spread. Now, the other thing I want you guys to get your arms wrapped around, because this is a common mistake I see with people when they do this. All right. So let's say that you can sell the spread for $250. Okay. Now, the strike is $5. Okay, it's $5 wide. So if you can sell it for $250, that means your max profit is. I mean, essentially, that's all you got to work with is $5. So you already sold it for $250, so it can go to 0, in which case you'd make the entire $250, okay? Or it's going to go to 5. In this case, you're going to lose $250. So your max profit is $250, and your max loss is $250. Now, one common mistake I see people that do spreads is they think that that's the only thing that can happen, okay? And one of the things I want to tell you guys is that it's perfectly okay to sell a spread for $250, okay, and it starts to drop, and it gets to $150, okay, it's okay just to buy it back. You just made $1 on that trade, okay? So I want you to understand, first of all, you do not have to expire worthless, okay? And in fact, I don't encourage it. Okay, and why is that? Well, let's take a look. And this is probably the biggest mistake I see people make once they start doing spreads. Because what will happen is, and don't get me wrong, I love it when things expire worthless, because when something expires worthless, I mean, you win. It's like, okay, we won that one. But here's what you don't want to have. So say you sell something for $250, okay? You sell, and let's talk about Baidu. So you sold the 110, 115 spread, and you sold it for $250, okay? Now Baidu is here, and it's here's the 110 level, and now we come down to the 105 level, and now your spread's 150, okay? Great, you got a profit of $1. And okay, now let's say it comes down to 100. Okay, now, man, your spread's now down at like 60 cents. Wow, this is fantastic. And so what you're thinking, what happens is a lot of people think, wow, only 60 more cents to zero. Okay, and what they're not thinking is, holy crap, I've got $4.40 of risk. So I'm risking $4.40 to make 60 cents, and that's what people don't realize. So now Baidu happens, something happens, and bam, we shoot up, we go to 115, and suddenly this 60 cents goes to $5, which is your max loss. Okay, so just be careful. When you're like at 60 cents here, I mean, there's not much room left to zero, okay? So it's okay, and you know, one of the things I know Sosnoff has said is that when when it gets to like 70% of max profit, really consider taking it back, unless it's just some parabolic move that's totally in your favor. Okay. One of the common things that I like to do is in Apple is if I'm doing credit spreads is, you know, I may sell, you know, a credit spread for $1.90 like on Tuesday, like, okay, like this week we did the 605 600 credit spread on Tuesday, and on Wednesday it gapped up. Okay, the stock gapped up and the spread dropped down to 120. Well, sure, zero would be nice, but you know what? That's 70-cent profit for doing nothing. We booked it. You had a nice gap up. You know, you take it off and you book 70 cents profit. Okay, and that's very much okay to do. I just want you guys to get your arms wrapped around that. You don't have to let it expire worthless. Remember, okay? And let's come back here and want to, you know, the takeaways here on spreads. And if you guys are doing options, you know, I want you to remember this too, is for spreads, is now consider the spread instead of the outright buy. Why? Let's see if I can do this. You have premium decay on your side. Forgiving, forgiving, forgiving. You can be wrong and still make money, okay? So that's what I want you to start thinking about is like, you know, if you see, you know, like in this case, you know, going back to Baidu, is a lot of times in this situation we'll sit there and go, oh wow, it's a resistance, let's buy a put. What I want you to start getting your arms wrapped around is instead of buying a put, consider, in this case, selling a put credit spread, I mean in this case a call credit spread, okay, and this is one I'll look at tomorrow. I mean I like this setup and I'll look at it tomorrow. Yeah, nobody ever went broke taking a profit versus letting your profits run. Well, and the thing that's nice about vertical spreads, it's not really, there's not a lot of profits to run. You know, if you've got a directional trade, you've got a theoretically infinite amount of profit potential. With the spread, I mean, you're just kind of working with something finite. You can actually use bigger positions, but you can build up, you can, you know, make a living one point at a time. And how you mix it up is just position size. So yeah, and by the way, and you can set stops and targets on credit spreads just like you would like a normal option. Yes, so sell calls at resistance. So this is resistance, so we'd sell calls. And then down here, we would do put spread. We'd sell puts. So sell puts at support. So you essentially have, so right here, so here we came down to support. You can either buy a call or sell a put credit spread. And what I'm telling you is that selling the put credit spread of the two choices is the safer choice. It's more forgiving. Yeah, so what we're going to look at this week in the options room is we'll do some iron condors on some earnings plays. I think on Apple, and I don't know if Amazon is it, but yeah, we'll be doing that. Okay. All right. Yeah, and that's a good question there too, Brian. You know, if you would initiate that vertical spread at 60 cents, it's like, oh, wow, that's just not enough. Yeah, at that point you can just kind of take it off. All right, guys, so that's really mostly what I wanted to show you. So my goal with this was to very quickly take you from options 101 so you can understand options to getting you to the two strategies. I mean, essentially all you need to know to make money trading options. I mean, you can read books out there. There's some very good, very thick books out there that have all kinds of different strategies. The takeaways here are, one is all you need to make money trading options are what I've showed you. But secondly, now if you start looking at those strategies, I mean, all those strategies are actually just more complicated renditions of what I showed you. So, you know, for example, a butterfly is, you know, it's kind of like it's like a call credit spread and a put credit spread, but, you know, around the same strike. I mean, a lot of those are, you know, renditions of that, okay? So hopefully, you know, after this that you just kind of, if you have never traded options before, you got a good example of, you know, how to do it. Showed you some things that you can do for tomorrow or for Monday. And, you know, if you guys are in the options room or you're going to the, you know, obviously just if you have questions in there, let me know. And, you know, if you guys are going to Chicago, looking forward to meeting you. And otherwise, you know, let's go enjoy the rest of our Saturday. If you guys have any questions for me that I didn't answer, you know, if you're in the options site, you know, feel free to post it in the member forum or shoot me an email. And otherwise, you know, thanks for joining me on this Saturday. Yeah, Brian, for the book, really there's the first third of the book. Just focus on the first third of the book. That'll be your best one for the Mastering the Trade book. It's good, Beverly. Looking forward to seeing you in Chicago. Excellent. Oh, great, Jeffrey. No, that's good. We'll see you in Vegas. All right, guys. Great stuff. Oh, Mastering the Trade. They were just talking. I've got a book out called Mastering the Trade. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, weekly versus monthly. Don, the thing I like about the weekly options is that they're very short. So in general, you want to sell weeklies. You know, they got that short lifespan. They got high premium. So we do a lot of credit spreads on those weekly options. All right, guys. And this will be recorded, and they will communicate with you on how to get the link and everything like that. All right? Auto trade for options, very close. Our plan is to get the CTA going first. That'll be like first week of August or so, a little after the first week of August, and then we'll get the auto trading going. All right, guys. Have a fantastic rest of the Saturday. And yeah, the time went by pretty quick, so I guess that's good. And see you Monday in the room.